Well, that certainly energized the room. Thank you so much for that. We got a full agenda tonight. We'll start with, is there any supplementary agenda?
Thank you, Mayor Cannon. Yes, there are a couple reports. Item 17C, Council, on Friday, we emailed out to you a report of Service Ontario temporary operation and management that has been added to the agenda. In addition, I'd just like to point out that item 20C was the changes to the Ontario Works Assistance with a presentation from the director. It is being requested to be pulled this evening by administration. Also, Council, as you may see in front of you, unfortunately, we have been trying to get the microphone and voting system up and running, but there is a special part that is required from the supplier, and we understand that it is being curated right now, but it did not arrive today by 4 o'clock, although our IT department has been following up very much. So we are back to the microphones. What is different though this time is, according to our procedural bylaw, we do want to do a recorded vote. So even though it will not be electronically, when we ask you to raise your hands, I ask that you do raise them up high. We will be recording here any no's against the vote so that we can observe that into the minutes. So make sure you put them up high, and I will be looking to see how the votes go that way so we can record them. Thank you. Oh, sorry, one more thing. The microphones, I know last time it took a bit for us to make sure that they were on. We do understand that there's a 6-hour battery, so you're welcome to leave them on. If they happen to be off, it does take a couple seconds once you turn them on. It is different than last time. The on button is on the side of it, and once you see the green light, you're good to go. So we'll be able to pass it around, and you're welcome to leave them on so it doesn't take that time. Thank you.
Just to add to that as well, when you're speaking the microphone, if you can keep it close, because you notice when the secretary clerk was speaking, that when she pulled away from her mouth, you couldn't hear it. So everybody keep it close. Item 8, disclosures of pecuniary interest, direct or indirect, for open session agenda items and the general nature thereof. Councillor Solomon?
I probably can bark it out loud enough, but
The at-home audience would hear you.
oh, they'd be so thrilled to hear this. It's the continuing one that I haven't written it out because it's the same continuing one that is related to the transit at 15C, which I declared earlier. But every time it comes up on the agenda, I think I'm required to repeat it.
Seeing none, seeing no other, number 9, recognition.
Council, this evening we have a recognition of Thorne Cornell for winning the North American Championship of Irish Dance for boys under 8. If he could come forward, and perhaps is his coach with him? Coach is coaching. Okay, that's fine.
It's not too often we get a North American champion in our midst. So Thorne, I want to say congratulations. We're all very proud of you, and we're looking forward to seeing all the rest of your accomplishments as you continue on in Irish dance.
Woo-hoo.
Item 10, planning.
Thank you, Mayor Cannon. The process for the planning meeting for each application will be as follows. 1, the clerk will announce the item. 2, the mayor will ask if there's anyone present other than the applicant or their agent with an interest in the item and indicate so by raising their hand. 3, individuals or their agent present with an interest in the application other than the applicant will be asked to proceed to this podium, provide their name and address, and address council. 4, council will be asked if it has any questions of each presenter and the applicant. 5, administration will be asked if they have any comments based on any discussion that may have occurred. 6, council will be asked which action it wishes to take with regard to the item. If there is no one present indicating an interest in the item, there will be no presentation by administration, and council will be asked what action wishes to take with regard to the item. If any person or public body that files an appeal of a decision of council in respect of the proposed applications does not make oral or written submissions to the municipal clerk before the proposal is approved, they are not entitled to appeal a decision to the local planning appeal tribunal unless in the opinion of the tribunal there are reasonable grounds to have the person or public body as a party to the appeal. Notice of passing. Information on council's actions tonight will be posted on the municipal website. All persons receiving notice of this meeting will receive a notice of passing of a bylaw relating to any of the planning items presented here tonight if approved, including appeal procedures. Any other person who wishes to receive a notice of passing or notice of council's decision must submit a written request to the municipal clerk. Thank you.
10A, application for consent and zoning bylaw amendment, William and Suzanne Simpson, 9747 Fairview Line, Community of Harwich, South Kent.
Is the applicant, his or her agent present? If so, please raise your hand. Noted. Is there anyone present other than the applicant who wishes to speak to this application? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, what action would council like to take with regard to this application? Councillor Latimer?
I'd be pleased to move this recommendation.
Councillor Sakachi?
I'd be pleased to second that.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor, put up your hand. Opposed? Carried.
Ten B, application for consent and zoning bylaw amendment, 10311143 Ontario Inc., 29557 St. George Street North, Community of Camden, East Kent.
Is the applicant, his or her agent present? If so, please raise your hand. Recognized. Is there anyone present other than the applicant who wishes to speak to this application? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, what would council like to move forward with? Councillor Foss?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to move the report, but I'd like to see a correction because it's not East Kent, it's North Kent.
Noted.
Good catch. Seconded by Councillor McGrail. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote. All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Carried.
And 10C, applications for official plan amendment, OPA 57, consent, zoning bylaw amendment, and site plan approval, Allied Masonry Contractors Limited, 12 and 14 Story Street, Community of Blenheim, South Kent.
Is the applicant, his or agent present? If so, please raise your hand. Noted. Is there anyone present other than the applicant who wishes to speak to this application? If so, please raise your hand. Noted as well. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. The subject property is located on the south side of Story Street between Chatham Street North and Vander Avenue in the community of Blenheim. The property is approximately 4.2 acres in area and contains 2 existing industrial buildings. These buildings currently contain an automotive repair shop and an auto body shop. The balance of the lands are vacant. The property is designated residential area by the Chatham-Kent official plan and are zoned primarily deferred development. The applications before council today propose to remove the lands that are designated residential from its specific policy area and change the underlying long-term land use designation to employment area. This official plan policy change would then allow the consent applications to be approved, which would see the lands be divided into 3 properties, creating 2 new parcels, one being a new half-acre parcel for a new automatic car wash facility, as well as the balance of the vacant lands being 2.7 acres for a proposed future public storage facility. The portion of the lands containing the existing buildings would be the third parcel there created. Further, a zoning bylaw amendment is proposed to rezone each of the 3 proposed parcels into individual site-specific industrial zone categories On the retained parcel, to recognize the existing commercial industrial uses. On the half-acre parcel, to permit a new automatic car wash. And on the balance of the vacant 2.7 acres, to permit a public storage facility. It's not a regular planning application where someone proposes to amend the Chatham-Kent official plan. The official plan is Chatham-Kent's long-range planning document, and it contains high-level policies regarding the growth and development of our community. So I think one slide, just quickly, to put this property in perspective with the rest of Blenheim is important. That is a map of Blenheim with some indicators for reference in case we're confused on what's north and west and south when I'm talking. So basically to the right or to the southeast of Blenheim is the main core of Blenheim in purple. This is the downtown and Main Street area at the corners of Chatham Street and Talbot. Surrounding that to the south and north are primarily the residential areas of Blenheim. There's designated lands for residential growth, all surrounding this area. Across the tracks towards the northwest are the lands that have historically been part of Blenheim's industrial land base. And it is in this area, which has historically and currently been Blenheim's industrial land base, that the subject property is located. It's noted with a red box there on the screen. So around the mid-1970s, a portion of land in Blenheim's industrial or employment area was redesignated to a site-specific residential zone, which essentially permitted residential uses to be established in this area, provided that any existing industrial or commercial uses ceased to exist, or if their impacts could be abated to a reasonable degree. In 1978, the residential subdivision, which is now Vander Ave, containing approximately 33 dwellings, was established. After that, through the 1980s, 90s to today, there hasn't been further transition of residential uses in this area. There hasn't been a lot of change in this area really at all. So at this time, the applicant owns the lands denoted in red. These lands, as I've mentioned, are part of the residential land base in Blenheim. The official plan amendment, again, proposes to remove these lands from the residential land base and move them into the employment land base. Further to that, the severance applications would propose to create two parcels, one being parcel 1, which I've labeled on the map. This is the half-acre parcel proposed to be developed into a new automatic car wash. The parcel noted as parcel 2 are proposed to be rezoned to permit public storage. The applicants indicated that there's no plan to immediately develop into this use. However, the zoning would permit it if the applicant chose to do so in the future. The proposed zoning would not permit any other uses outside of these two uses that I've described. And the retained parcel noted as R would be rezoned simply to recognize the existing automotive type uses on that property. The planning considerations given in this application revolve around the surrounding land uses. The areas highlighted in green are those areas within this site-specific policy area that currently contain residential uses. The areas highlighted in blue are properties that currently contain industrial or commercial uses. The balance of the lands around this property are a mixture of residential and commercial industrial uses. Finally, a site plan application is before council tonight, which sets out the technical details and parameters regarding the development of the automatic car wash. It contains a single bay drive-in automatic car wash and with exit and entrance from Story Street. The car wash is oriented in such a way to best mitigate the use from the residential uses next to it, where all the car stacking and car wash is oriented as best as possible toward the existing commercial and industrial uses to the south. The stormwater management application included a stormwater management report, grading plan, site servicing plan, and a car wash technical sheet. These applications have been reviewed in the context of the provincial policy statement, Chatham-Kent official plan, and zoning bylaw, and would comply with these documents if approved. Therefore, it is recommended that official plan amendment application file D09BL0119A, being official plan amendment number 57, be approved and the implementing bylaw be adopted. That consent application files B7519 to sever and convey a portion of land approximately 0.2 hectares in area be approved, subject to the conditions noted in the planning report. 3, that consent application file B9119 to sever and convey a portion of land approximately 1.1 hectares in area be approved, subject to the conditions noted in the planning report. Four, that zoning bylaw amendment application file D14 BL 1719A be approved and the implementing bylaw be adopted. And 5, that site plan control application file D11 BL 0619A to permit the development of an automatic car wash at 14 Story Street be approved, subject to the conditions noted in the planning report. Thank you.
Does council have any questions of the administration? Councillor Sakatchi?
Thank you, through your worship. Just one quick question, just to kind of brief, you did a great job presenting this in your presentation, just because this is one area I've never really understood too much in Blenheim, because it is kind of, Blenheim is very well planned, but that area kind of has little spurts of everything around there. And I just wanted to make sure everybody that's not familiar with the area, although it's deemed residential area, that's more of a technicality, because really, if you go to that area, it's really commercial, correct?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Yes, I agree. The land uses and the uses surrounding this area are predominantly commercial and industrial, with the residential pockets that I've noted.
I just wanted to clarify for anybody that hasn't been there that it looks like that it's an actual residential area, but if you drive by the lot, it's really technically a commercial area. So, thank you.
Would the individual who has an interest in the application please proceed to the podium? Please state your name and address for the record, and you may address council with your comments, concerns, or questions.
My name is Philip Hill. I live at 18 Vander in the city of Blenheim. First of all, I would like to say good evening, Mr. Mayor, and to councilors. I've been asked by some of the residents of Vander to speak to you tonight about the proposed car wash and storage units being built behind some of our houses. And although Mr. Chikachi might think that this is more of a place that doesn't have residential, we would beg to differ, us that live on that street. We are kind of a unique neighborhood, and we have a kind of a unique street, as you can see by the pictures. In our street, we all know one another, we look out after each other, and it's this uniqueness that we have come to like. It is a quiet street with hardly any traffic. We have a nice little park at the end of the street for children. We are made up of all kinds of people with young children, and people like myself, a little older. It's not that we are opposed to new business, Mr. Mayor and councilors. It's just that we want to have businesses that will share our same values. Good corporate citizens who work with us and not against us. We are now bordered on our street with businesses in our backyards on both sides of the street. On the Cathcart side of the street, we still don't know, as people from Vander Avenue, what's going in there. Nobody has said anything. All we know, it's been dug up. And now, on the other side, backside of our street. Now with the car wash and the storage units behind us on the other side, we as neighbors, regardless of which side of the street we live on, are looking out from our backyards and see trouble coming. What do these businesses intend to do for us? Noise, traffic, lighting, etc. Will water pressure be a problem? Snow removal? Will this just be kind of pushed up against our fences in the back and forgotten about and cause our property to be damaged? Will security be an issue for these storage units? Will there be any kind of buffer or fence built to protect us? I think as counselors, you should yourselves be asking these questions. Would you like to look out your backyard and see a car wash, storage units, or trucks all over the back like they are being now in Cathcart? Well, I would like to thank you for the time. We appreciate at least being heard. Thank you, councilors and Mr. Mayor. Any
Does-
questions?
Does council have any questions of the presenter? Seeing none, does the agent have any comments?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm Tom Story. I'm here on behalf of Allied, the applicant. We have representative of the owner and the engineer here. First of all, with regard to the storage unit area, this is a site-specific zoning bylaw, even though it's an employment use. It's not permitting any other employment uses. It will be subject to site plan control. Many of the issues Mr. Hill spoke about regarding buffering, that sort of thing, lighting, are all items controlled under site plan control. Council will have, I'm not sure in this case, whether council, we will come back to council or not, site plan for that area. Just strictly staff, yeah. I can tell you from experience, staff takes that responsibility very seriously and does a good job on making sure site plan issues are covered. Also, I point out that storage units is a benign use, let's face it. There's not a lot of traffic created there. It doesn't require any servicing to speak of. And if it's designed properly with the proper buffering, it would hardly be noticed by the neighbors. The car wash itself is separated by the driveway that would come in, so it's a fair setback. I think finally, like a lot of the smaller towns and villages in Chatham-Kent and Blenheim is no different. You've got a mix of land uses over time as former councils, pre-amalgamation municipalities would deal with an application as they came forward, taking advantage of whatever economic development they might represent. And that's probably how Vander Ave was developed in the first place, because as Ryan pointed out and Councillor Sakachi also noted, this area is primarily commercial and industrial, not residential. So that's all I have to say on this particular issue.
Does council have any questions of the applicant? Councillor Scotchy?
So as Mr. Hill said, what's going to be happening if there's any issues? Like how are you guys going to work with the residents if there are issues in regards to any, like the traffic control, the lighting and mitigations of stuff like that? So are you guys willing to work with the residents? Have you spoke to some of the residents there? I got to be honest with you, I haven't heard no concerns yet from the residents myself, but hearing Mr. Hill's his presentation, it does lead to me to have a few more questions anyways, to say the least.
Well, Mr. Niclario is here, the representative from the owner, and I know he actually, I think personally, went to all the residents on that street and the other surrounding areas and explained to them what was proposed. And if there are any comments at that time or any concerns raised, he would have responded to them in the plan that's proposed. Otherwise, I guess the only thing I could propose would be to, at this time, I wouldn't recommend it, but considering the time that has been spent already on the plan, is to not proceed with the zoning on the public storage area at this time, defer to another date. What I would suggest, actually, and we've done this before, is, as Mr. Norton noted, the site plan would normally be approved or dealt with by administration under your site plan procedural bylaw. That doesn't mean council can't make a motion tonight to ask the site plan actually be brought back to council rather than going through administration, and make it a public meeting with public consultation. The problem is that site plans themselves are not subject to circulation or public consultation on their own under the Planning Act. When they accompany a rezoning or an official plan amendment, such as the case here, then they normally become part of the overall consultation process. But on their own, specifically under the Planning Act, you're not required to circulate them, and for good reason. So if you're concerned about that, Councillor Sakachi, in my opinion, the methods of buffering, the normal controls we put on where parking occurs, on fencing, on landscaping, on berms, on lighting, make sure it's directed away from neighboring uses, are all covered through the normal site plan approval process. If you want to come back here and have an opportunity for people to speak to it, then you can make a motion to do that. It won't happen otherwise. I guess that's my point.
Thank you. Is it possible, through your worship, to ask administration a couple more questions by chance?
As well, is administration have any other comments given the discussion? Then we'll open up for questions before a vote.
So in regards to the traffic, have you guys looked at that from a planning perspective in regards to the excessive traffic that's going to be generated through there?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. This application makes no suggestion that there'll be excessive traffic generated. Car wash, 6.5-minute cycle, maybe does 9 cars an hour on an automatic car wash. That's probably my estimation of the amount of traffic that would be generated at a peak hour. As far as public storage, again, as Mr. Story mentioned, it's a fairly benign use. People tend to come infrequently to access those storage areas that they might be renting at that time. So, no, certainly traffic's not a concern of mine.
And water pressure?
The servicing brief prepared by the developer's engineer indicated that there was adequate capacity and pressure in the system. At the time of permitting, the applicant will be required to make applications to the Chatham-Kent Public Utilities Commission for the connection and any service upgrades required. And through those processes and the due diligence of the PUC, those should not be issues either. They're not expected.
Okay, thank you.
What action would council like to take? Oh, sorry, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you very much. I guess now is as good a time as any. I have to echo Mr. Hill's concerns on this one, truth be told. And when a motion comes forward, I'm not going to make it, but I would be looking for the site plan to return to council. You gave a good, I guess, overview of how exactly this came to be. But can you think of any other areas? I can't think of any in Blenheim, but maybe in another community where we'll effectively surround a single residential road with commercial and industrial property?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. No, standing here, I can't think of a specific example that I would compare to this one, other than I would suggest that it is the residential use that was introduced within an industrial area that already existed and not an industrial area that's encompassing residential area.
And that was going to be my follow-up, and it predates me, and potentially, I don't know how far back the records go. Was it that it was an industrial area that had a residential piece carved out, or was it a residential area that eventually became commercial and industrial?
That's a good question. It would take more investigation to look at each property. I certainly don't want to make a generalization that would prove to be false and give council bad advice. Certainly, there are historical residences on Chatham Street that likely pre-existed some of the employment or non-residential uses here. And going back to some earlier comments, I think it just shows that it is truly a mix of uses and that they have been established at various points over time.
It certainly is a mix, and to be honest, I mean, it's kind of an uncomfortable mix, truth be told, at least for the folks on Vander. I mean, as recently as 2001, 2006, we were still building homes on Vander, so they weren't all built in 1978. And I mean, even if they were and you moved in and you're expecting to see, you know, a neighbor behind you, to somebody to talk over the fence with, or whatever the case may be, that's one assumption. And then when you talk to planners or whoever the case may be, they're like, yeah, that's residential. Someday you're going to have a house back there. That's one thing. But then when you say, well, no, now we're going to put up this benign, and it is relatively benign, but it's not a home, it's not a neighborhood. We're cordoning these folks off and putting them aside in this very strange situation that could potentially affect their quality of life and their property values. That aside, when we move residential property or residentially zoned property out of Blenheim, like in this area, how is our supply, our mix for residentially zoned property in Blenheim?
I'm sorry, I just need clarification. The question was,
So we're taking this because it was zoned residential, deferred development, right? So we're taking this out. How much property do we have still currently zoned in Blenheim for residential?
there is greater than a 20-year supply of residential land in Blenheim.
Okay, and how about industrial or commercial?
I don't have the numbers exactly. Bruce is here, maybe might want to speak to the growth piece. That's a bit beyond the development applications here.
Thank you, Your Worship. The industrial supply or commercial supply, it would also be adequate based on the growth that's occurring, but some of that is being absorbed, especially in the Blenheim Business Park as we speak here. So that supply is being used up. The majority of the supply is in that general area.
Okay. Again, I won't be bringing the motion forward, but I will be looking to see the site plan return. I guess my only concern is, and I'll leave it to the floor. I mean, this is a spot you could put this. I'm just not sure that it's the best spot that you could put this. And I don't think for the residents of Vander, they moved in under the assumption that someday, eventually, there was going to be an entire neighborhood there. And now they're just one house surrounded by an industrial park. And that's not a place I'd be comfortable putting them. Thank you.
Councillor Foss?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm looking at the report, and it has a statement there that 20 unverified signatures were presented in support of this, and they were all from Vander Avenue. I'm not sure what unverified means in that.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Yes, the applicant, through its submission from the planner, indicated that they knocked on around 33 doors, received 20 people in support, 5 did not answer, 1 was opposed. Unverified simply means that the municipality didn't, contact those people and double check. We take the petition at face value.
So I'd be safe to say that 2/3 of the neighborhood supports it?
Based on the petition submitted, yes.
Okay, thank you.
What action would council like to take with regard to this application?
Mayor
Councillor
Cannon.
Wright, you have another question?
Yes. I'd be concerned if I was the residents along that area. If they rent that out for a storage area and they start parking campers along their back wall, all they're gonna look out and see is all these white campers in their backyard. There should be something in this agreement so that there's nothing parked along the fence in their backyard.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Those types of site design details are something that staff through the planning and other departments would look at the submission of the site plan, particularly fencing, landscaping, and buffering from the residential area.
What action would council like to take with regard to the application? Councillor Pinsino?
I'll move the recommendations, Your Worship.
Councillor Foss?
I'll second it.
Okay, any questions? Councillor Thompson?
If we could, and I don't know if it'll be friendly or not, I would like to see an amendment made that we would see the site plan returned to council before final approval.
Councillor Pinsino, are you okay with that? Councillor Foss, you okay? Okay, so we'll add that in. Is it added in? Okay. Okay, we'll put it to vote. All in favor, put up your hand. Opposed? Motion carries.
So I have 15-2, is that correct? Thank you.
Item 11, deputations.
Thank you, Council. This evening, we have quite a few deputations. I'll remind all speakers tonight that you have 5 minutes. It will be timed. In order to get through all of the deputations, we ask that you respect the timelines. I will give who is speaking and then who's on deck so we can get the people up for who's on deck. The first speaker will be Irene Carey. She is the chair of the Active Lifestyle Center. She will be speaking on item 20A, which is the Active Lifestyle Center lease renegotiation. On deck will be Christine Bentma and Michelle Schreier.
Your Worship and Councillors, good evening. Well, I've been introduced. I am Irene Carey, Chair of the Board of the Active Lifestyle Center, representing 1,400 members. The best way to illustrate the contribution of the ALC to the life of age 50 plus citizens is through this video, which was made in 2014. So I direct your attention to that. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Thanks. Yeah. And then. Thank you. Welcome to the Active Life. You know yourself. Time to enjoy what you've earned. And we've been helping look at our center on Merritt Avenue. Programs and activities. Whatever your interests, we put the Zoom in Zumba. Across the floor.
If you think for old people to come to, and you see one activity, and you think, oh, line dance, I've never done it before. people have said that I've never and one activity leads to another activity, and there's nowhere to cut.
If it's games you want.
Cover all the angles. Presenter is the one. I would whether it be after program. You go during the day to have
Side and let your skills shine. 1,000 members make the act on community. A community. Watch a grad life to
It's okay, I stopped your timer.
active lifestyle. Like you, watch a grad dance and sing.
Okay, welcome to the active voice. See what we have to offer and how.
Doesn't have all of them.
People come here for, they're doing the programs, but they come up, they come here, they're flying their face.
You just watch.
You do because they've worked.
It really is.
Yeah, I apologize for the sound.
I apologize for the sound. I don't know what happened, but you can see visually how important it is. You can see the joy and the engagement of our participants in some of our 60 various programs. And they are led by our 200 plus ALC volunteers. And this is just a sampling. Okay, well, sorry about that, as I said. But you know, as the senior population of Chatham-Kent continues to expand beyond its current, 45% or a little more, the ALC wants to continue to grow and provide recreation and social activities and programs for citizens, since they are no longer provided by the Chatham-Kent's Recreation Program Division. Like, we've taken that over. So to provide these services, we depend on government funding, federal, provincial, and municipality. And together, these three make up about 12% of our operating expenses. It's not very much, But mainly, we depend on membership fees, user fees, fundraising, and rentals. Now, as a nonprofit organization, we are asking you to support the recommendations from your administration to renegotiate Article 7 of the lease agreement between the Active Lifestyle Center and the municipality of Chatham-Kent, so that major capital expenses are funded by the lessor, the municipality. Because right now, we've been paying for them. Please note that the estimated capital expenditures of $862,000 over the next 15 years amounts to $57,000 annually, not the $70,000 shown in the financial implications section of the report that you have in front of you. We cannot afford this. In addition, our commitment to the community extends beyond our senior demographic. 27 different community organizations rent our facilities from Monday to Friday evening. We also offer community rentals on Saturday and Sunday. So our services extend beyond the 1,400 members. Please help us to continue our good work for our seniors by approving the renegotiation of the current lease agreement. Thank you for your attention.
Next speaker is Christina Michelle. They're from the Chatham-Kent Coordinating Community to End Violence Against Women regarding item 12A1, Truth and Reconciliation Orange Shirt Day. On deck will be Tara Cadeau and Sean Panger.
Good evening, Mayor Caniff and members of council. I'm Christine Beintma from the Chatham Probation and Parole Office. We are now with the Ministry of the Solicitor General. And with my thanks to my colleague here, Michelle, for stepping in. Initially, we were going to have Chief Duckworth from Caldwell First Nation attending with us. However, she wasn't able to attend. She has asked me to share something with you, however. Chief Duckworth shares that Caldwell is part of the Three Fires Confederation, and Chatham-Kent is in this traditional territory. A land acknowledgement should come from council so that you understand the history. However, she was happy to provide us with a starting point. She hopes that this will help you start to consider the land and waters where you live and work, and would be happy to assist moving forward. So this was a land acknowledgement that she shared with me. We respectfully and acknowledge that the municipality of Chatham-Kent occupies the traditional, ancestral, and contemporary lands of the Niswi, Ishkodewan, Anishinaabe, the Three Fires Confederacy, which includes Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi. We acknowledge the land and the surrounding waters for sustaining us. Michelle.
Thanks, Christine. The Chatham-Kent Coordinating Committee to End Violence Against Women is a collective of community organizations and justice partners working to eliminate violence against women through education and collaboration. We are painfully aware that more than 1,500 Indigenous women and girls in Canada have gone missing and murdered. And they are the ones we know about. The number of Indigenous women and girls who have actually been trafficked, gone missing, and murdered is much higher than 1,500. You are no doubt familiar with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada and know that in 2015, the Commission released a summary of their final report, Honoring the Truth, Reconciling for the Future.
Included in the report are calls to action and recognition that reconciliation involves action and change on multi-levels. It seems clear that community action and change must occur if the real truth and reconciliation are to be achieved. We envision steady movement towards societal and systemic change for genuine and meaningful truth and reconciliation in our municipality. It is this vision that brings us here tonight.
Coming up just 1 week from today is Orange Shirt Day, first marked in 2013. Executive Director of the Orange Shirt Society, Phyllis Webstad, was only 6 years old when she went to a mission school where they took away her clothes, and that included the brand new orange shirt that her gran had gotten for her. This year's theme for Orange Shirt Day is Every Child Matters. Needless to say, when every child doesn't matter in a society, they grow up to be adults who don't matter to society. From that perspective, we see Orange Shirt Day as a great time for action to move truth and reconciliation forward in our community. That is why we are here talking to you tonight. The National Center for Truth and Reconciliation, University of Manitoba, has released a booklet, Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action. With thanks to Councillors Kirkwood White and Finn, the coordinating committee was made aware of this excellent resource. And the Coordinating Committee to End Violence Against Women is pleased to provide your worship, members of council, and others with copies of this resource tonight, along with an Orange Shirt Day button that we hope you will wear proudly on Monday, September 30th.
You will see that these booklets contain 10 principles of reconciliation and 94 calls to action delivered by the TRC, as well as 46 articles of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. This resource will be made available to the public while supplies last on Orange Shirt Day at the Civic Center here from 11 to 1 next Monday. If someone wishes to have one and can't get to the Civic Center during the time, they can call 519-354-8908 during business hours to make arrangements if copies are still available. We thank you very much for your time on the agenda this evening and would be pleased to try and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Next speaker is Tara Cadeau and Sean Panger, Erie Shore Drive Property Owners Association regarding item 15A, the flooding erosion update. On deck will be Steve Varnas.
So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Tara Cadeau, and I'm here representing the Erie Shore Drive Property Owners Association. Wanted to first and foremost thank the municipality for all of their efforts in the most recent storm out there that led to the state of emergency. We were very appreciative of the efforts that were taken very quickly, and so thank you for that. We also wanted to speak tonight in advance of Thomas Kelly's presentations that is coming up a little bit later, because we thought it was a good opportunity to provide you with a little bit of background and a little bit of an education on the uniqueness of Erie Shore Drive and why we feel strongly that our scenario is different than the other flooding issues and communities that you're dealing with within the municipality right now. And then we do have a couple of asks. Why not take a little time to do a little asking while we're up here? So the first that we wanted to impress upon you is a little bit of the history of why Erie Shore Drive is unique. It is an engineered structure. It is not like the rest of the structures or the rest of the communities that are facing the effects of climate change and high waters. It is different, and so we want you to understand that when you start to think about short and long-term solutions. It was built under the Drainage Act in 1918, and it was built primarily to create the 1,600 acres of prime farmland that it's still protecting today. And some years after that, the wooden seawalls and the groins were constructed again under the Drainage Act to actually protect the dike. And so when, as part of that process, years later, the maintenance wasn't kept up, and it became the burden of the shoreline property owners to actually protect the shoreline, which protects your assets, being the roadway and the other infrastructure, in addition to that, protecting the farmland. And so we've carried the burden over many years now of protecting the shoreline, and so wanted to let you know tonight that we are hoping that we can have a collaborative conversation. We've been very fortunate thus far in meeting with folks from Chatham-Kent to talk about solutions. But right now we're facing some short-term solutions that we really want to impress upon you the importance of making sure that the solutions that you're looking at and putting in place are not done at the detriment to the shoreline property owners, who are the ones who are holding the water back right now and saving that dike the best that we can. But we've been doing that individually on our own and piecemeal by piecemeal without a lot of oversight or best practice guidelines. And so what we want to do is make sure that we're working together, because one of the solutions that you're looking at tonight is the placement of concrete blocks along the roadway, which will narrow the roadway, which is causing a lot of concerns. For those of you who have ever seen shoreline protection, you need to be able to get heavy equipment in there. So if you want us to be able to continue to protect the shoreline, we need to be able to get equipment in there. In addition to that, I know there's been additional spillways that have been put in, and there will be spaces within the concrete blocks. But we need to make sure that those are effective enough to ensure that the water isn't coming back and making the issue worse on the property owners. And so we don't It's not that it's a bad idea. We just want to make sure that it is the right idea. We are the ones that are going to be at the front line and seeing firsthand whether or not it's successful. So we hope that we can work together in terms of evaluating the success, and if it's deemed not to be successful, that we can work together on how we can modify that plan to ensure it's working effectively. In addition to that, I know that very soon you're going to be looking at long-term strategies to deal with all of the various communities. And so we want to impress upon you that it should not just be the burden of the municipality to actually look and carry the cost of a long-term solution. Because our situation is unique, we feel there is an opportunity to find a collaborative solution that we actually can share the burden with the municipality and with all of the stakeholders, frankly, who benefit from the drainage works. And so our ask is that we continue to have meaningful engagement and that you'd be open to working with us for effective short-term and long-term solutions. In addition to that, we think that there are a lot of other stakeholders, not just the agricultural landowners, but ERIO is a key stakeholder as well. I'm sure they don't want an island to live on. So we think there's a huge opportunity. And we know that in the past, most recently in 1998, there has been efforts that have not been successful under the Drainage Act. But we are here to tell you that it's 20 years later, it's a different time, we're a different community, and we feel confident that we can find a collaborative way forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Steve Varnes on the same report 15A, the flood erosion update. On deck is Angelo Ligori.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and esteemed council. My name is Stephen Varnes. I have an extreme interest in County Road 17. I live across the road from the lake, and the shoreline is eroding. So far, the road is undamaged. That was a very costly road. There's a bridge involved that is undamaged. That was very costly. There's a water line that every member that lives on that street had to pay for. My portion for 93 feet was $10,000. So maybe that's $1 million for the water line. Wildwood, as you know, is a trailer park, seasonal. They were allowed to put a high pressure sewer line in front of my house, which is, in front of the lake and is in need of protection also. There's electric power lines and phone lines, as well as hopefully someday gas and high-speed internet. Okay, this is a very nice area. It's a scenic route. Everyone in this county knows it. If they don't, they should go there. It's the most beautiful place in Chatham-Kent. I bought on the highest level of land above Lake Erie that I could find on County Road 17. County Road 17 is not a low spot where I am. What is in need of immediately, if not sooner, is some kind of stabilization, not an improvement. Okay, we need to stabilize it to, one, save $5 million of the county's money. If you don't do a small amount right now, you risk $5 million losing all the infrastructure. To replace the infrastructure might be another $5 to $7 million. Now you're talking, you're going to eat up all your $16 million that you just got from the federal government. That, I'm sorry I'm spoiling the news, but 15 is designed to tell you that you got $16 million grant to save erosion. If you spend $25 million. My proposal, and I'm willing to work with the engineer, is to show that it would be a very low cost to do it now. Okay, maybe even $200,000. As an example, if you were a farmer and you had a $50,000 crop in the fields and you were told that if you didn't spend $2,000, you were going to lose your whole $50,000. What does that farmer do? What do hundreds of farmers do? If you had 100 crops at $50,000 a crop, you got $5 million. All those farmers have to spend is $200,000 to save $5 million worth of crops. It's the same thing with this road. It's a county road designated 17, the same as Talbot Trail. Talbot Trail has erosion, it gets fixed. Erie Beach, which was a fine presentation, it's a low-lying area that had to be engineered, okay? There has to be some acceptable risk. Those people are probably scared to death every winter or maybe in the spring, I don't know. But when a person buys the highest level above the lake on the most desired area in Chatham-Kent, please try to find it in your power to do some acting on this issue. If you don't act, I guarantee you there will be destruction. Now, there's some easy fixes that have already been done along that way, maybe 25, 50 years ago, okay? And those are 5 groins down by Hill Road. It's an area that everyone used to fish. There used to be a big dock out there. They put 5 groins. If you don't know what a groin is, it goes out about 20 feet into the water. It stands up maybe this high, and as it goes out into the water, it gradually disappears. But the longshore drift will catch the sand, and it has caught the sand in that area. 5 groins full of sand. Down by the other side of Terrace Beach, where there's a lot of homes that are on the lake side, oh my gosh, they're probably worried too, right? They're right at lake level, okay? They have to do something there maybe, okay? But it has been since 2017 that there was a problem noted on County Road 17. On November 2018, they closed it, and now it's 2019. And now there's a study that's examining the whole shoreline. Maybe nothing will ever get done, and your council will be at risk of being possibly sued for doing nothing. You have to stabilize it first. That's your key concern. It's an emergency situation. Okay, I know your engineers must have said to you that, hey, this is really important. Maybe we don't have the money right now.
That's
but
time, sir.
I would like to request a motion that some action be done on this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Angela Lagori. On deck is Sandra Jones.
Your Worship, Mayor Caniff, Council, and ladies and gentlemen. I just wanted to stop by for a little bit. I recently joined a cool task force called the Prosperity Roundtable. Some of you may know about that. And last week we had our first meeting for action planning. So we are actually going to do something that we're calling quick wins. And at that meeting, Ian Clark was there, and he mentioned that there is a report that is going to be presented tonight that deals with transportation. And lo and behold, when I looked at the list of this large report that we have, it says inadequate transit system, especially for those outside Chatham, is the #1 priority that came when we had our meeting back in May. I think it was May sometime. It was a large group at the Portuguese Club. Finger food was served and all of that. However, I'm here today to represent the roundtable, our action task force, and also industry that needs to have some definite improvements for how to get people to work, because I believe that that's the way people make money. They have to go to work. So most of you will have seen the report that is going to be presented later on, and it specifically requests an on-demand system that has been tried, has been effective in many locations. So what I'm here to ask the council and everyone is to support it so that we can take some action and make our way to reducing poverty. The action team that we have is about 12 people, and out of that, we were planning to take 1 or 2 quick wins that come out of Ian's report and do something about it. We're not sure yet what we're going to do, but we're going to have another meeting in a month, and then we'll decide. But part of it really is about what it is that you hear tonight. And Ian is on that group, by the way, and he promised us that he's going to take back some actions, and then we're going to do something with that. So I ask all of you, if you have some recommendations, please pass them forward. And we plan to get some work done on it. Now, the last time that I wanted to mention is when you read through the report that Ian has, there were some comments that kind of struck my eye. I just read some of them. There's a nice one here that is from a young lady that says, I would like to see access on buses for young mothers with babies in strollers, not having to take babies out in full strollers and getting on the bus. It's especially difficult. They've gone shopping and carrying extra things for a lot of moms. So if you read through that report, it really, really hits home on what it takes for folks that do not have transportation to use our bus system today. So take your time and understand that report, and we really want the full support. So thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Sandra Jones on item 15A, the flood erosion update. On deck is Hector DeLange for the same report.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Sandra Jones and I'm a resident of Erie O. I wish to address council this evening with regards to flooding in Erie O. Following a severe storm in early July, a vast amount of our village was underwater. Yes, some of this flooding was caused by wave action due to high winds, but a great deal of the flooding was due to ground level saturation, caused by the very high water table, the highest on record. And since we're a sand bottom landmass, the water was coming up through the ground. I assume all councilors have been notified of the situation that's transpired on Post Point Lane. On July 16th and 17th, a privately hired worker spent 2 days hand placing each rock, and a 4 feet high by 8 feet wide berm was built, effectively blocking entrance to the waterfront at a municipally owned public access point. This was done on the false pretext of flood mitigation for municipal property. On September 11th, I requested in writing that a copy of the Village of Erie official plan be provided to all councilors in preparation for this evening's meeting. The purpose of this plan was to provide the municipality of Chatham-Kent officials with clear definitions, expectations, and ground rules upon which we agreed to being amalgamated and thereby losing our village proper status. A few key points of this plan that need to be pointed out. The planning approach as laid out in Section 1 was to minimize future land use conflicts. Section 2 deals with land use policies, and Section 2.5 specifically deals with these community facilities or access points. Policies number 4 states fire access roads shall be protected both for public safety and to continue to serve as a valuable means of public access to the bay. These 11 community facility points designated on map Schedule A along the shoreline of Rondo Bay were strategically set up to access the water in case of a fire emergency, but they were also set up to allow public access to the waterfront without trespassing on private property. I have also briefly reviewed the Municipality of Chatham-Kent official plan dated in 2018, and there are repeated mentions of the municipality supporting public access to the waterfront along all shorelines. Despite my initial verbal recommendations of the acting fire chief of the Municipality of Chatham-Kent that the rocks be removed, the legal department has stated in writing, it does not appear there are any firefighting safety issues that need to be addressed. From this statement, I have interpreted that as expected, our local volunteer emergency response team would climb over this pile of loose rock in full firefighter gear with adrenaline pumping at full force during an emergency situation. I've been told that a water to land transfer to an ambulance will only transpire at the marina. What's our backup plan when the bulk of this privately owned marina is underwater with flooding? The gas pumps and the access docks are underwater, similar to what we've experienced this past summer. Are you setting the municipality up for lawsuits from the injured because we're not choosing to use the quickest access point to emergency assistance? On August the 21st, a sign was placed on this one access point only, fire lane, not suitable for public access to the water. This sign has been placed on a pole that is not owned by the municipality, on a pole that was also installed by a private individual. Because of the safety aspects of climbing the loose rock pile, I totally agreed to the sign being placed. Now that the rocks have been removed, there is absolutely no need for this sign to remain. I personally have inundated municipal officials and council members with calls and email correspondence since July. On August the 14th, I presented Ward 2 councillors with a petition signed by 102 tax-paying residents of Erie. On the same day, the Erie Community Association voted overwhelmingly in support of my motion to have the rocks removed, yet they remained in place for the duration of the summer season and were not removed until September 16th. The usage of these access points has not been excessive or abused. If either of these conditions had existed in the past, this issue would have been addressed with our council long before now. Quite frankly, I am totally amazed at the amount of time municipal employees have been willing to waste on this one small 30-foot wide piece of municipal infrastructure, which most never even knew existed prior to this event. Until such time as the municipality of Chatham-Kent and Chatham-Kent councillors as one body perform a comprehensive evaluation along with public consultations and rezone all these 11 properties, the designation as community facilities as noted by the village plan remains in effect today. It is my opinion that a group of a few municipal employees, even with their high-ranking titles, do not carry the authority to unilaterally revoke the right to this access. There needs to be fair and equitable compromise between community usage and flood mitigation, and there needs to be fair and equitable treatment to all residents of Erie, and not favorable allowances given to some individuals who feel they are above the laws that govern us all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Hector Delange on item 15A, the flood and erosion update. On deck is David Robichaud on 15C.
Mr. Mayor, council members, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Hector Delange. Along with my wife Marilyn and son Mark, we own Delhaven Orchards. I'm talking about the closing of number 3 highway up at the end of Coatsworth Road. This is one of the most scenic roads from Windsor to Fort Erie, the piece right along from Wheatley to Blenheim, and the road is closed. I was at a meeting that Chatham-Kent had, and it was very informative. And I thought as far as the fire, police, and ambulance, the people, the residents that time were very well informed of what the action would be because the road was closed. The very disappointing part was the consulting engineer had nothing to say. They closed the road without council's approval, and they just closed the road that had been open so long. That was sad. I'm not blaming anybody from Chatham-Kent, but what do we pay these consultants for, to come to a meeting and not say a word? He got easy money that day, I'll tell you that. He made his bucks pretty easy. I think we've got to fix that as soon as we can. Our farm markets, along with some of my fellow people that grow fruits and vegetables and sell along number 3 highway or Talbot Trail, it's hurting our business. It's not going to put us out of business, but it's hurting our business. And I think as soon as that can be fixed, I hope every effort is made that we can fix this. In closing, I haven't got much to say, but we must remember tourism is a very important part of Chatham-Kent. Look at the money we spend on it. And we can't have some of the most important roads closed. After all, Chatham-Kent's logo is, we're growing for the world. At least give us a road to get the customers there. Thank you.
Thank you. The final speaker is David Robichaud from Tech Savvy with regards to 15C, driving forward CK Transit Strategy Project Initiation. We do have one last deputation I'll just mention now from Philip Mock. It was written and it was attached to council's email this afternoon.
Thank you, and thank you, Mayor and Council, for this opportunity to speak tonight. Tech Savvy Solutions Incorporated, or Tech Savvy, being one of Chatham-Kent's largest private sector employers, supports the Driving Forward CK's Transit Strategy Project Initiative being presented to Council tonight. Tech Savvy has over 500 employees in its Chatham-Kent headquarters, most of whom work in our contact center, providing 24-hour, 7-day-a-week service and support to over 300,000 telecommunication customers across the country. Being the largest contact center in the area, TechSavvy needs to staff a number of shifts around the clock in order to provide 24-hour, 7-day-a-week service. The lack of available transportation is a barrier we face when we hire new employees, and it's a barrier right now for some of our current employees, as TechSavvy has various shift times required to fill our demand. Excuse me. Currently, no bus services are offered after 7:15 p.m. This creates a huge transportation gap for staff who work until 7 p.m. or later. We have several shifts outside of the current public transportation schedules. For example, some of our shifts end as late as 1 o'clock in the morning, and we have overnight shifts ending at 7 a.m. Our shift end times cause transportation and financial stress to our employees who want to work these shifts, but must rely on alternate options for travel to and from work. I have a couple of examples how the initiative can reduce transportation barriers for the TechSavvy prospective and current employees. TechSavvy's employees seek affordable transportation that is available when they require it. On-demand transit would allow a more flexible schedule for off-time routes. Employees would be able to potentially pre-register for pickup times and locations based on their schedules, and they get their schedules 2 weeks in advance, so that would help them a lot. Employees are looking for affordable fares, convenient pickup and drop-off locations, shorter wait times from current frequency schedules, modern amenities, and possibly Wi-Fi on our transit systems. Interurban service would also provide beneficial for those wanting to enter the workforce but have no or limited access to transportation into Chatham proper. This has been identified as a barrier in TechSavvy's current recruiting process. Many Chatham-Kent citizens are not able to attend some of the events happening in the area or around the area and other communities because of lack of transportation to these events, or limited bus services that do not allow them access to transit later in the evening. We have also identified similar issues when recruiting professionals from outside Chatham-Kent, with no easy flight options direct to the municipality or long train rides multiple times a week. Excuse me. We currently have several executives who travel by train weekly, some from Toronto, some from Ottawa, and one who drives because there's no convenient flight options for her. TechSavvy supports this recommendation as a first step to eliminating the municipality's transportation barriers to improve transportation in our community, not only for our employees and future employees, but also for everyone in our community. And we hope that you do too. Thank you.
Number 12, consent agenda. Any items to be removed from the consent agenda and placed aside for consideration and debate separately? Councillor B. McGregor. Councillor Solomon? Okay. Can I get a motion to accept all the other items? Would you raise your hands? In favor?
To receive.
Yeah, just receive. Favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 12A1, Councillor B. McGregor.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Just wanted to thank Christine and Michelle for giving the deputation this evening, and as well Chief Duckworth for sending along her comments. And I think it's positive to see in this report that the municipality is already making some steps in its reconciliation process, particularly in offering staff training, cultural awareness, and cultural sensitivity. And I think it's positive that we're planning some updates of this engagement with our Indigenous partners. And just as part of that engagement and getting some information back to council, I don't think there's a motion required for this aspect, but I'd like to see that in the form of a presentation with some recommendations on how we can better as a municipality be partners in this process. So essentially what the next steps are going to look like for us. So just hoping that we can see that the next time this issue is coming back. And I do have a related motion based on Chief Duckworth's recommendations. So I'd like to make a motion that staff report back with recommendations for a land acknowledgement to be used prior to municipal events.
Seconded by Councillor Harrigan. Any other questions relating to that?
Not related to the motion,
Related to the motion?
just reports.
Any other questions related to that? All in favor? Hands up. Opposed? Carried. Okay, Councillor Crew?
Thank you. I just want to, related to that report, I don't know what, when I read it, it really just hit a nerve. And when we talk about the residential schools, you know, my youngest daughter was 10 when the last school was closed in Canada. We need to not forget that this happened on Canadian soil, and it wasn't that long ago. I want to encourage everyone on Red Shirt Day, which is September 30th, to wear orange. Council, all of us, and I think that we all need to show our support for Phyllis and her work with the Indigenous community. And I want to thank April for really bringing this forward. And I think that along with Councillor McGregor's motion, we need to start moving forward with our truth and reconciliation. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Councillor Solomon with 12A3.
Yes, through your worship to administration. I have maybe one, maybe two quick questions. Who's going to come forward? Okay. I brought this forward because a resident asked the question that you have sitting here. In 2015, it was indicated that there would be ongoing savings of $141,000 annually, and you've provided us with the comparison to what was projected and what the actual savings have been, and they exceed $141,000. Is that correct?
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Solomon, that's correct.
Can you tell me, and there is, staffing level has increased with the environmental planner position, correct?
That's correct. We were increased by one last year during budget with the environmental planner.
So can you tell me how many times the fees for planning applications that the public pays when they apply have been raised since 2015?
They've been raised by the CPI on an annual basis, as has been the case for as long as I can remember. Yeah.
Just by CPI?
Yeah, that's correct.
And it's done annually?
Done annually, yeah.
Approved by council in the budget?
Yep.
Thank you.
Any questions? Seeing none, Councillor Solomon, can I get a motion to accept this information? Seconded by Councillor Finn. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 13, presentation of new notices of motion. Councillor Bondi.
I, Councillor Michael Bondi, hereby provide notice that I will bring forward the following motion at the October 7th, 2019 council meeting for discussion and voting. Whereas administration has indicated it is preparing an application for a 4,000-seat twin pad arena and multi-sports complex. And whereas council may vote against this application, resulting in the total loss of grant money for from the other two levels of government. And whereas it has recently been confirmed that there's grant money available for retrofit projects. And whereas administration has also indicated that the application for a scaled-down project will be simple to assemble based on the initial architectural drawings for the larger project. Therefore, be it resolved that council direct administration to also prepare applications for a not larger than 2,000-seat twin pad arena and an application regarding a twinning of Memorial Arena with the necessary upgrades to the existing facility. These contingency applications will provide council with options considering the size and scope of the project. Thank you.
Councillor Harrigan?
Thank you. I, Councillor Melissa Harrigan, hereby provide notice that I will bring forward the following motion at the Monday, October 7th council meeting for discussion and voting. Whereas council has identified growth as a strategic priority for the 2018 to 2022 term of priorities, and that includes the commitment to right size and rationalize current inventories of bridges, roads, parks, and buildings in support of new infrastructure investment. And whereas council has also approved community engagement, highlighting the importance of the voice of community being reflected in council decision-making. Therefore, be it resolved that staff return to council with a report for information or series of reports that includes the following. 1, clearly defined terms of right size and rationalize in relation to municipal assets. 2, drafted or confirmed divestment lists for any municipal assets in the categories of bridges, roads, parks, and buildings, including information about the decision-making process that led to the identification of those assets for divestment. 3, confirms or establishes a decision support matrix to be used for all municipal assets recommended for divestment. This decision matrix should consider not only life cycle and capital costs, but also the following: safety, agricultural impact, given the prominence of agriculture within the municipality, small business and other economic development impacts, the environment, traffic impacts to surrounding roads when appropriate, comparable asset performance across CK, any indicators that can be used to apply consistent decision-making processes across assets for better understanding of their value and contribution to the community, and any other pertinent information. 4, confirms or establishes a community engagement strategy for any divestment, rationalizing, or right-sizing. This strategy should consider the importance of notifying impacted residents in discussing divestment of assets near their place of residence, and that this information can come to council in a single report or a series of reports focused on assets by category, and that no divestment of any asset be brought to council until the information requested is received for that category of asset.
Item 14, Integris.
Your Worship, we have a presentation by Jim Hogan, President and CEO of Integris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councilors. I'm pleased to be here this evening to provide the 2018 results for Integris and provide also the few resolutions that we have for our annual general meeting. Joining me is Tomo Matesic. He's our Vice President of Engineering and Operations, and Chris Cowell, who is our CFO as well as VP of Administration. So afterwards, when we have questions, hopefully the three of us will be able to answer all your questions. Just to summarize again, 2018, we did the merger with St. Thomas Energy, and now the municipality of Chatham-Kent, still the majority shareholder at 71.5%, City of St. Thomas 20.6%, and Corix Energy at 7.9% ownership. Integris, we're very community focused. We participate in many events in the community, whether it's our time of our staff or possibly even some funding. And a couple of things that we've done last year here in Chatham, being the St. Clair College Lineman Program. That's important to us. That's where we're attracting some of our new young talent. And then the Habitat for Humanity. That's a good company employee event where we do get out there and do some hard work for a needed family. And then there's a few other activities that we've done in some of our other communities that we serve. As far as employees, very skilled and dedicated. But we have a bit of a challenge in that a lot of retirees and retirements have happened. A lot more will come forward. So new staff, which is good and exciting, some new skills, but it also creates some challenges because a bit of a learning curve and trying to get everybody up to speed. But it's great to see the young engineers and the young customer service folks and just young talent coming into our organization. But there is probably with many organizations, some expected skilled shortages. And one group, the Electricity Human Resources Canada, does say that it's going to be a bit of a challenge for us over the next 3 to 5 years. So it's something that we spend a lot of time with, working closely with the post-secondary education so we can attract the best talent we can. Conservation programs, we've been very successful. There was a 6-year program that we're working with the IESO, so the Independent Electricity System Operator. We've achieved almost 99% of our 6-year target. Last year, we provided $2 million worth of direct payments to all of our customers. So it's worked out very well. Unfortunately, the government and the ISO has changed their plans for conservation programs as we go forward. They won't be delivered directly through Integris, but we will be working hard and working with our customers and working with the various conservation providers to ensure that our customers will continue to benefit from those opportunities as we move forward. Capital programs, we invest heavily in our distribution system. Last year, we spent about $10 million in total throughout all of our system. Biggest thing that we do is converting our distribution systems to the higher voltages, so modernizing the system, putting some new technology out there. And here in Chatham, a couple of our larger conversion projects, we did some work on Merritt Street, and then also did quite a bit of work in Blenheim. What we're also finding is, which is nice, some subdivision growth. We've had some in our other service territories, but we're now seeing quite a bit of it in Chatham, so it's quite exciting for us. So it's a lot of work and a lot of effort, but it's something that we strongly support growth in our service territories. As far as the customer service, we do work hard answering the calls, providing the best service to our customers. We've been focusing a lot in the last few years of electronic communication with our customers. There's a web portal where customers can go on, learn about their bills, learn about conservation, send us their disconnects or whatever it is they want to do electronically. So that's working out really, really well. We now have about 20,000 customers using that. And then we did do a customer survey. And once again, we were at 94% customer satisfaction. And that's the same percentage or very similar percentage we had the year before, which is quite interesting that with the merger and everything we're doing, the customers are still satisfied. We're still able, with all the extra work we're doing, still able to provide exceptional service to our customers. And our services company has the data center here in Chatham, and we now have a fiber network that's in St. Thomas. That company there, the earnings have increased. A little bit has to do with the additional revenue, but a lot has to do with taking care of our expenses, managing our expenses. And then the transmission company, there we have the utility corridor, and we have some providing some service to a number of the renewable generators. There also our earnings increased, and a lot of that had to do, again, with operating costs and managing those costs. And the new company that we had last year, and that was Integris Renewable, and that's where we have a 15% stake in the North Kent Wind investment. That investment or that development went into service last year, and the first initial dividends were higher than expected. So that also was a success last year. And our power lines company, so the distribution business, that it's regulated by the Ontario Energy Board. So everything we do, whether it's approving our rates and setting the standards for our services, it all goes through them. And one thing that they do is they rank all of the utilities. There's now, I think it's 63 utilities in Ontario, rank us as far as efficiency, and we continue to be in the second group of efficiency, which means our costs are better than, I think it's 15% efficient than what they would expect us to have. So we're still being very efficient and doing the best we can in keeping the rates down. And then as far as our financial results last year, as part of the merger and the number of the items that I referred to, we hit some new highs. Our net earnings were, $6.1 million, just a little above that. We declared and paid the highest dividend, so almost $5.7 million. And then the municipality of Chatham-Kent received a little more than $3.9 million last year. Our balance sheet, obviously that's a key item, making sure that we're managing our debt. Again, the Ontario Energy Board regulates how much debt we could have or should have, or what makes us a financially strong business. And there they say, 60% debt is the level that they'd like us to see at, and we're around 40%. So we have a strong balance sheet that provides us the flexibility for future growth to continue to invest in our distribution system. Now, that's the 2018 results, and then as far as for the annual general meeting, we have 3 resolutions that we come forward, and we'll be sending a resolution to administration or council to sign. And there's 3 resolutions, one being approving the audited financial statements that were dated December 31st, 2018, and these were approved by our board. And then the other one is the board members. And so that our Integris Inc. board has 9 board members, and 2 of them are from council here, being Councillor Solomon and then Mayor Darren Caniff. And then the last resolution that we bring forward is that Deloitte would be appointed as the auditors once again for this coming year. So with that, Chris Tomo and I will answer any questions that you may have.
I'll get the motion on the floor, and then we'll ask any questions. Councillor Solomon.
Your Worship, I think it's appropriate to move recommendations number 1, 3, and 4. Probably neither you nor I should be bringing the motion on appointing ourselves to the board. I sure hope someone else will do that. But I'll move the first 3, and then somebody else can do the others. And on the 4th motion, it is that council appoint a representative, and the representative be authorized to vote the resolutions. I would suggest that the council appoint His Worship as the representative, and that His Worship be authorized to vote on the resolutions that are included in the 2019 Annual General Meeting of Integris on behalf of the municipality.
Okay, can I get a seconder on that? Councillor Crew? Questions relating to that? Councillor B. McGregor.
Mayor Caniff. I would like to move number 2 that Councillor Solomon was unable to move in. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, well, I'll deal with that one once we get the other 3 taken care of, and then we'll go to item number 2. Any questions regarding Councillor Solomon's motion of 1, 3, and 4? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now, Councillor B. McGregor, what's the motion for number 2? Seconder, Councillor Bondi. Any questions related to that? Seeing none, put it to vote. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Right?
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Item 15, Infrastructure and Engineering Services.
Item 15A, Chatham-Kent flooding erosion update. We have a presentation by Thomas Kelly, General Manager of Infrastructure and Engineering Services.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I'd like to speak to you tonight to give Council the best information we have on the latest status of our flooding and erosion. This is a rather sobering topic at this time. In honor that it is the start of positivity, the 12 days of positivity, I'll try to keep it as positive as I can. So first of all, I think it's important that we have the big picture view for all of Council. Certainly appreciated the deputations tonight as well. It's good to hear from the public, so council can make the best decisions possible. I'm going to talk about our network of engagement, all of the different groups that we have involved in our studies. I'm going to give a very high-level overview of the various areas where we're experiencing flooding and erosion. Some of the key feedback from our public meetings, we've had 7 of them. And just recently, September 12th, we met with really the highest level of authority within the government, which is the Premier's advisor on flooding. And he's producing a report. We did meet with him personally, so that was also positive. I'm going to talk about our action plan and then summarize in any questions you may have. So this is our network of engagement. You'll see that, first of all, from the provincial side, we've met with a number of different people, ministers at AMO on the first 2 categories, the environment, natural resources. The Minister of Agriculture has actually been on site. Municipal affairs have been on site as well. And also throughout this whole, all of these issues, we've worked very closely with the Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority. They're in the audience tonight. I certainly appreciate all their support through this. And as I mentioned, the Ontario Special Advisor. So to date, the only external funding that we have received is from the federal government. The total amount of all projects is $41 million, of which 60% of that comes from the municipality, 40% from the feds. That program is somewhat on hold, suspended because of the upcoming election. We've also had many engagements, most recently, again, just last Thursday, with other municipal governments. I can tell you this is a province-wide problem. And the public engagement has been extremely beneficial, I think, both ways. Us providing some level of education, and then in return, I think we have better information. And finally, we've hired external experts in coastal engineering. That's an expertise that we do not have. Structural consultants, but also we have some of the strongest engineers regarding flooding right here in-house based on our level of experience. So I'd like to talk about all the different areas. I've broken it A through G. The deputations tonight you heard were from areas D, F, and G. This study, this summary, does not include, as you see in the bottom corner, the stormwater plans for Tilbury, Richtown, and also the combined master plans, Chatham. Those are our stormwater master plans. That's a lot of work as well. I can tell you the funding there is not good news. We're right now about 17% funded. We should be putting aside $19 million per year, and right now we're putting about $3 million aside. So that's a totally separate issue on another day. So I'm going to go through each area, very high level, present the current status, the challenges, the actions, and show you some pictures as well. So start off with the Sydenham River. So the water levels have been overtopping the sidewalks and some of the dock areas, some of the boardwalks. We are regularly going into that area with our public works group, cleaning up the seaweed, debris. We have right now in the plans $10 million in investment, a total of 11 projects, primarily focused on slope stabilization for the Sydenham and its tributaries. And you can see here some of the issues that we're having, particularly on the boardwalk. But every time we have that situation, you can imagine it's slowly working away and tearing down our infrastructure. Area B, which is Mitchell's Bay and the Dover area, we've had several closures, road closures, pier closures as well. We've added concrete blocks to minimize some of the wave force that's been coming in. Our nemesis is anytime we have a west wind, that's when we'll have issues out there. And it's interesting, the only wind that really doesn't have a big impact on us is the north wind. Every other wind from the east and from the south, it really causes us issues all around Chatham-Kent. Similar to Wallaceburg, we have regular cleanup of seaweed and debris. We are initiating a drainage study on Dunlop Crescent and Crawford Street, again due to high water levels. And we've got about $16 million planned in future investment through that same program that the feds have offered, the Disaster Mitigation Adaptation Fund. You can see some of the pictures here. Again, this is looking at the pier, the flooding of the pier. Right now, the water levels have dropped. The pier is accessible, but again, anytime we get that west wind, we have water overflowing on the pier. Next is the Thames River. So I think everyone's aware we've had 2 state of emergencies, one in 2018, one in 2019. One caused by an ice jam, another was by just really heavy precipitation. Both of those events, we spent approximately $350,000 to try to get things back in order. Again, we have 9 projects planned through the DMAF funding. You can see this is what it looks like. The top left corner is some of the ice jam that we had. On the right-hand side, that was one of the breaches we had. And as soon as that happens, we had over 300 acres of farming flood out. Most of our issues, interestingly, was caused by muskrat holes and creating holes within the dike. And then the last picture is overlooking the Thames River here in Chatham. Next, Lake Erie. This is one of the deputations tonight. So we started an EA back in 2017. We put that on hold pending this Lake Erie shoreline study. The Lake Erie shoreline study is something council approved through the Natural Resources Canada. We've been very engaged in that. Some great information, and I would say leading information within the meetings I've had with the province. Clearly, Chatham-Kent is above the rest and leading the pack as far as our disaster mitigation, the work that we're doing, all the flooding work we're doing. It's the actual special advisor was very impressed with our work to date. The repair is estimated at $20 million, and we've had 2 public information centers. So this is a big challenge for council, is that once we start down this path, there's no turning back. And you're going to see in each area some pretty big numbers. This one's 20 million. Erie Shore Drive is going to be even greater than that. And then all along the west side, it's a staggering number. So all in total, we're looking at, for Chatham-Kent, over $1 billion in investment that's really required. So the question is, are solutions possible? Yes, they are. It's just the cost is the big question mark, and what we can do about that. So the road has been closed officially since January of 19. We continue to have erosion on this particular south shoulder, and it's caused by rotational failure. So you can see some of the issues. This is a picture from the spring. When you see cracking like that, that's never a good sign. Of course, what's going to happen there is a shear crack, a shear failure, which is where the forces are really exceeding the shear strength of the material, which is soil in this case. So that's when we see that, that's when it's almost like an avalanche. Everything just collapses, and that's very dangerous. Next is Area E on Shrewsbury. So this is a very low-lying area, provincially significant wetlands designation. We have regular flooding there. We've also just recently postponed work on road upgrades simply because the water table is so high, it would make no sense, it wouldn't stay. We had discussions with this council about 3 or 4 years ago about providing an engineered drainage system. Council actually contributed $25,000 toward that, which was really unprecedented at the time. But unfortunately, the residents could not get the Drainage Act petition secured. And as a result, we continue to go out there with our public works group and investing resources really to keep things operational for that community. That particular community is in such a low-lying area. Based on current water levels, we're going to see a lot more flooding. And certainly the risk, you may recall Peter Zuzak was here. He talked about the risk of Rondeau and the barrier that Rondeau offers to Rondeau Bay. If that barrier fails, we're going to see increased wave energy as well, and also certain climate change has a big impact. So on the left-hand side is a couple of pictures from Shrewsbury. On the right-hand side is Erie O. Again, Erie O, the issues are there is when we have an east wind, so that's a big problem for us. Lastly, or sorry, not lastly, but Area of F, Erie Shore Drive. So just a quick summary, we had a state of emergency from August 27th to September 9th, caused by high winds and rain. We had 123 homes at risk, and 35% of these are permanent residents. In the end, we have damage to about 12 homes, 3 break walls. Also, the supporting slope was damaged in the drainage. We initiated a voluntary evacuation with assistance from our police and fire. And we also, working with our utility companies, they decided, depending on the situation, to shut off hydro at times and also natural gas. Thankfully, there were no injuries. Our door-to-door notification, we executed very successfully, I thought. We provided free accommodation to all residents, all their pets. We also coordinated community services. Many of the councillors were actively involved in that area, and we thank you for that. Free sandbags were offered through the Lower Thames. We had 24/7 monitoring of the area from the IES group and also Lower Thames. And we initiated from the IES group immediate roadway slope and drainage repairs. The community response also in a time of an emergency was also very impressive. I just wanted to make note of it, that we had many companies step up, and it's certainly very proud at times through this course of a sadness that you see people are always willing to lend a hand. And certainly this is a list: U-Ride, SM Freight, Chatham Breakfast House and Grill offer free food. Waste Connections, also our Public Works, provided garbage pickup. Tech Savvy, who you heard today, they offered financial support. And as Tara mentioned in her deputation, we felt that our efforts were appreciated out there as well. So far today, we've spent about $300,000 to shore up the roadway structure. Our focus has been that if the road fails and breaches, that is going to cause major havoc to many things, including there's a water main that runs down that road. Residents will no longer receive access to their homes. So we've tried to do everything we possibly can think of to really enhance the structure and also enhance the water flow. We've added concrete blocks. We've added rock chutes, sometimes referred to as riprap. Drainage clean out, and then road cracking, we've seen more evidence of it. We've tried to repair that through sealing, and also we've done some milling and paving of the roadway, and that was done really to, again, assist with the flow of water over the road. The Provincial Disaster Assessment Team has been managed through our fire group. They've been out, they've done their evaluation. We're waiting for feedback. Unfortunately, we don't have anything to report today. Their assessment is really used to determine the eligibility for the Disaster Recovery Assistance for Ontario's program. The Lower Thames have also put out a request for public comment on OREG 152 for Lake Erie Shoreline. That's going to end on October 3rd, so they're looking for public input. They're going to be back here in 2 weeks and report on that. And we are currently converting the road to one-way direction only, west to east. This is going to provide us with, again, additional reinforcement for the road, $200,000 incremental. So since the emergency occurred, we've spent about $500,000 in that area. Oops, you can see some of the issues. And really, the one with the truck, we had a situation, and it seems every time we have one of these events, things get a little worse. But we had almost 2 feet of water flowing at one time over that road, which was really, really concerning for us. So here's some of the engineering challenges. I've focused on area of F because we've spent a lot of time on that. And what that graph shows you is that the blue line indicates the current static water level of Lake Erie, and the top line indicates the actual top of the dike, which is the road. So back in June 22nd, that differential was only 10 inches. That's not a very large safety factor and not something we're comfortable with at all. Right now it stands at 22 inches. The other thing is, as everyone knows, that there's such little room to move. You heard from the property owners that they don't like our concrete blocks, but at the same time, we struggle to reinforce that property because we have significant slope and a drain on one side, and to the south side we have private property. So that's a big challenge for us. This is a significant new slide that you haven't seen before. And beneath the lake surface, we've gone out and done some lake surveys. And it is, this Lake Erie is really eroding at a very rapid rate. So the line you see in black that's going off on a 45-degree angle, if I can show that right here, that is where the surface resided back in 1938. The line below that, down here, is where it resides today. So you go about 20 meters out from the breakwall situation, and you've got about 5 meters of depth. And why that's so important is that that increases the wave energy significantly. So that design previously, which sloped up, that is what we call as an abatement, and that decreases wave energy. Now we don't have that anymore. So the waves are coming in with much more significant energy, and with that energy, you get much more significant erosion. So that's a big concern for us. The drainage itself, this is a municipal drain. It was never really designed to manage Lake Erie flooding. It was designed to manage farm field runoff, and what that means is 1 inch of water every 24 hours. So down at the bottom, the yellow line, that's Erie Shore Drive, and all of that water that's coming over the road is fed up through the drain and actually is delivered back into Lake Erie, just to let everybody know. Certainly our challenges are Mother Nature as well, and if you believe in climate change, and even if you don't, we certainly have seen a big change in the conditions out there. So the long-term temperatures are expected to increase. We're seeing a higher frequency and intensity of storm. Reduced ice coverage is going to result in now potentially year-round erosion, which leads to increased wave energy, and then in the end, acceleration of erosion. So the bottom line is every time we get a wind from the south that exceeds 30 kilometers per hour, we know that we're going to have issues out in Erie Shore Drive. The design criteria that we are trying to figure out with our long-term strategy is that what is going to be the range that we're dealing with, and we need to design for that. The sad news is that the conditions we saw on August 27, 2019, is that we talked to residents, we've talked to staffers, it was the worst they've ever seen for that particular area. So this slide, you've seen this before, this is all of the Lake Erie levels. You can see on the right-hand side, over the last 100 years, it's difficult to see, but over on the very far right is 2019, you can see we're at a peak, very close to the 1% chance of flood level. But when you factor in climate change, we should be designing much higher, and that's the yellow highlight. At the same time, the experts will say, as much as the temperature will go up, things could also change significantly, and we could actually see a significant drop in water levels. So we also have to design for that. So we want to create a system that really manages all of our infrastructure, properties, et cetera, businesses that can fall in that range and are resilient in that range. So lastly, the engineering challenge is the existing dike and roadway. We seem to continue having these issues. We are monitoring the structural stability of the roadway through geotechnical explorations. That's a fancy way of saying we're looking at not just on top of the road, we're looking beneath the road. We've done some boreholes to about a 4.5 meter depth. We have all of that analysis. We go out regularly and look at that. At times, when we have these conditions, the roadway is completely saturated and has very little strength to it. And that's very concerning for us. And we're seeing a continued decline of the roadway, which also is referred to as the dike. So although our analysis says the dike is currently stable, as these events occur and the increase in intensity and duration, the risk of a dike breach is certainly there. So that's why we're taking every action we can think of to move forward. And if it does breach, this is a slide that shows you what the impact would be. So what that equates to is 1,600 acres of farmland. You can see how widespread it is. And you can also see that essentially Erie O becomes an island as it once was back in the 40s, I understand. The last area, Area G, is Talbot Trail. Significant bluff erosion, a little different situation where we have essentially a very high cliff, and we're seeing shear stress as well, leading to rotational failure. We have also closed that road, and we're looking at a potential short-term alternative. We'll bring that back to council, but we're still looking at the long-term solution, and hopefully we can marry up the two. But this is a level of investment that, as I mentioned before, is very concerning. So just a very high level estimate was for that 32-kilometer area. If we were to repair that, that would be $640 million total investment up front. And then every year thereafter, we would have to maintain it at $12 million per year. I can tell you we have nothing planned for this in our asset management plan at this time. So this is all new data for us, new information, and it's something that really we all need to get a strategy in place. So this is what we're seeing here, and when you're seeing those rotational cracks, again, cracking of the soil, that could lead to a shear failure, which is very concerning. So the feedback from the public meetings, I think there's been recognition that everybody has a role to play, all governments and landowners as well. I think the next statement is very true. It is confusing where to get help. There's so many different departments involved, from the Ontario government, from the feds. It would be wonderful to have a point of contact, single point of contact. This is a quote where it said, high water levels and climate change are destroying my investment. There is a lack of information in the technical solutions. Because it is on private property, everyone has kind of come up with their own solution. But I think all of the landowners realize that as soon as you have one weak link, everybody suffers. And that's exactly what happened back there in August, that there was a breakwall failure and everybody was impacted. So the question is, what's the commitment of the governments? What's the public responsibility? What programs are available? And certainly with all the flooding, there's been a lot of commentary on, well, what about the septic tanks? Are they operating properly? And I haven't actually been investigating that, but I would say probably that's a big concern too. And then the consultant work that we've done has been very beneficial. So all of these public comments I presented to Mr. McNeil, who is the province's special advisor. And these were the asks that I went to him with, is that, we want to work together with you. Let's form a working group. One of the challenges I personally had is that it's just so broad, so many different groups, so many people involved. I'd like to narrow the scope. And I think we have a lot to offer from Chatham-Kent, and I think that was recognized in the meeting. But it would be nice if we could define the specific roles of each government and clearly define what programs would be available, what the guidelines, the provincial guidelines would be on building, rebuilding, managing properties, and then really develop a unified technical solution that property owners must adhere to. One of the things is the Lower Thames can recommend, but at the end of the day, it's on private property, so it's really up to the private owner to decide what to do. I asked if we could be part of the pilot program. We'd be the test case. Use us, and let's try out some of these principles. And that's in their court right now. And I'm hopeful that this would be an opportunity for the province and the feds to really illustrate some success stories as well. So our action plan, short term, as I mentioned, is that we're doing everything we can to improve our structural integrity, particularly of the high-risk areas. Again, this is all new work for us. For those in the audience, I can tell you when these issues occur, that's our number one priority. Safety is our number one priority for everyone. Everything is essentially dropped, and we're out there working to try to make this right. Anytime we do see a risk, we are closing a road. Unfortunately, we had to recently close that very nice, as it was mentioned, the tourism spot. It's a beautiful road. It's a beautiful site. And it was difficult for us to do that, but it was strictly for safety. And as well, we want to continue the collaboration. Tara mentioned in her presentation, absolutely, we want to continue that. This is an evolving story. We're open to look at things differently, but I have to say safety is always number one for us. And on Erie Shore Drive, again, very concerned about the integrity of the road. So longer term, we're asking council if to really seriously consider the Lake Erie Shoreline study. We're through the process right now. We're determining costs, appropriate solutions. And what we've asked is this, with the province, that this paper could serve as a template for everybody across the province and really throughout Canada. And I also asked is that the federal and the provincial government would actually concur with this study. This is what we're doing, you agree with it, and again, it would be a very nice unified strategy. So what you're going to see from this study is 4 different options. Peter Zuzek talked about this. Avoid, accommodate, protect, retreat. Avoid means we just do not build in that area anymore. Accommodate means, for example, you'd raise the foundation. That may be applicable in some cases. Other ones, number 3, protect, is where we always seem to gravitate to, and that is to harden the shoreline to protect the investment. That is all possible. It's just really, really expensive. Last is the retreat option. And we're going to look at that to withdraw or relocate the assets, anything that's in harm's way. And this is one, I can tell you the province wants to go in this direction, is we develop naturalized solutions. So that means using nature to help solve your problem. So in summary, the number of flooding and erosion events in CK are increasing in magnitude and frequency. This information is from the Lower Thames, that they've had 47 flood watches or warnings issued already in 2019. It's really staggering. We all know the major impacts to the homes, the businesses, and of course existing infrastructure. I mentioned if we wanted to do everything, the price tag is absolutely astronomical, exceeding $1 billion. And from our meeting last Thursday, we're convinced that the one-size-fits-all approach doesn't exist. We really need to learn from the past and rethink past practices. And climate change for sure must be considered. And it's an Ontario problem. I think really it's a North American problem too. So we would like this integrated approach by all levels of government. And again, I feel that Chatham-Kent is regarded as a leader. We've made that offer to the province. We'll see if they accept it or not. So that's my presentation. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
Yes, Mr. Norton has a few other slides maybe we can add into that. Are you ready for that? Just add to this and then we can take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just 3 slides. Here we are, Building Department. We just wanted to give an update in addition to my colleague's presentation. The Building Department has responsibility to go out and ensure that structures are safe. So after the flooding of the end of August on Erie Shore Drive, the chief building official and myself went out. His responsibility is to inspect. He inspected every single cottage along the Erie Shore Drive. He's looking for structural damage, shifting of walls or roof structures, complete destruction of walls, roofs, or floors. Out of the 144 cottages he inspected, only 8 sustained major damage requiring repair under the Building Code Act. That doesn't mean that other properties weren't damaged. We did see some walls and other sea walls damaged. Those don't come under his purview in the sense that he's just looking at the homes or the structures that people have built. So 8 of those homes will have an order to remedy an unsafe building placed on them. The orders will prohibit occupancy until such time as the owner repairs them under a building permit. The owner will have to obtain approval from Lower Thames Conservation Authority, who provides approvals in these instances. They've confirmed that they will provide approval provided the repairs are only for the repairs resulting from the high water and winds. There's no allowance for enlarging the structure. We actually want to encourage citizens not to improve or invest a lot of money there, given that there continues to be damage to properties and could be even in the coming months or years ahead. Those orders will be issued by the chief building official this month. The planning department, people may be wondering about this interim control bylaw that we passed in 2017. That was passed to further restrict development on Erie Shore Drive. My colleague, Mr. Kelly, just talked to you about the Chatham-Kent Lake Erie Shoreline Study, which is being undertaken. This idea behind this interim control bylaw was to give us time and not allow for additional development of Erie Shore Drive. That is expiring now in November 2018 after a renewal. And so we are proceeding now with our colleagues at the Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority, working with them, and they have now produced draft amendments to their policies. Those policies that they have amended will come to council at a future meeting in the near future for council to consider and give comment to. We do have members of this council who sit on that conservation authority who will be looking at approving these amended policies. Those new policies will further restrict development along the shoreline in erosion-prone and slope failure areas, and the Lower Thames, with planning support, is proposing to push out those setbacks even further, to take into consideration the fact that there's additional flooding and erosion that's happening now. In addition, we've asked Lower Thames to look at making it more restrictive to rebuild after damage to shoreline properties. Currently, a property can be rebuilt if damage is less than 50% of the structure. And then we're looking at the Chatham-Kent Lake Erie shoreline study to inform us as to future policy and zoning regulations. The new official plan is expected to be prepared in 2020 and 2021. The last slide is legal services. About 5 years ago, legal services was made aware of the fact that there's a claim being asserted that the municipality had an obligation to maintain shoreline protection works such as groins, wave busters, or break walls along Erie Shore Drive pursuant to the Drainage Act. And my colleague, Mr. Kelly, just showed you the Burke Drain scheme that runs directly behind the dike. Legal Services then initiated a review of all of our historical documents that we have in our possession here at the municipality going back almost 100 years. We also went out and got documents from the province. We did several FOI requests and obtained a large number of documents. We've now completed that review of all municipal and provincial historical documents that we could find. And to date, we've received no evidence that shoreline protection was constructed under the Drainage Act going out into the lake. So that is different than what you have heard from some residents. We are still open to receiving other information and evidence, obviously, if it's out there, but it does make a technical difference with respect to our obligations to do things out into the lake. We are aware, however, that for many years, non-municipal shoreline protection works were carried out. These groins, the seawalls, were built by private property owners along Erie Shore, including through shoreline protection assistance funding, which was administered by the municipality. And we have staff here at the municipality who remember discharging those loans essentially as they were paid off by residents. Those are all my slides. Thank you.
Okay, we'll open it up for questions now. Councillor O'Shea.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Thomas. You might not be able to answer this today, but the Thames River one, both of them, when we had the ice jams, people kept asking me, why are we not using a hovercraft to break up the ice? Are we able to do that? And if so, why didn't we?
Thank you, Mayor. So we actually looked at a number of solutions, especially with the ice jam, about breaking it up. And it was extremely difficult to get the equipment in to where it needed to be. It'd be extremely costly. And then the risks were evident as well, that if we were to break that ice jam, we would have flooded out Lakeshore. So that was the concern and why we chose not to pursue that route, really.
Thank you.
Councillor Thompson, followed by Councillor Pincinel.
I see the green. I am not red-green colorblind. I just want to say thank you to everybody who came out to speak tonight on the issue of the deputations, and as well Mr. Kelly, who has presented not only a lot of new information tonight, but a good overview of the situation for everybody present. It does feel like a lot of other evenings we've had around this table dealing with this particular issue. It was an interesting day, actually, yesterday and today for Erie Shore Drive and for Mitchell's Bay as well. Jason Homewood from the Lower Thames was out on site yesterday, and I wanted to say thank you to him. He was out there. He tweeted out at 4:50 this morning that every time a wave breaks over the break wall, my whole car shakes from the shock waves going through the ground. 5 to 10 properties with water in front. Boys are indicating wind speeds are dropping. Forecasts have been downgraded. Dodged a bullet. That's the life of those folks out there on Erie Shore Drive, day in and day out. And then today, the wind came out of the northwest, and had it come out of the southeast today, I'd be bringing pictures of more flooding. Keeping in mind the folks in the center of this municipality, one wind for Erie Shore Drive is a good thing. it's a disaster for another. I know that there was high water in Mitchell's Bay today. There literally isn't a good way for the wind to come from anymore. And with, I don't have a lot of questions, but I do have some comments. With the presentation, it's down to 30 kilometers an hour. It used to be when we were talking 5-6 years ago, it was 60 kilometers an hour, 70 kilometers an hour that would bring the hurt to Erie Shore Drive. And now it's 30K. And it's true that just back in August, that it was worse than I'd ever seen it. But it was only a breezy day, truth be told. It wasn't like the gales of November that are coming. So I do worry about the future, unfortunately. I've got a number of comments and questions, but I'll try and break it down as best I can into kind of how Mr. Kelly broke it down as well. I guess first off, some of the questions I'm getting are in regards to reducing Erie Shore Drive to a single lane. So I took a drive down there the other day, and for the bulk of the roadway, it is down to a single lane. You've closed it basically from the end of the high road down to Erie Road. But I did notice that the actual cement block closure is only actually about a couple hundred meters long. Can you speak to why we've closed the entire length of the dike?
Thank you, Mayor. We've closed that. Is really, we consider that entire area still to be at risk. The areas that you see where we put the concrete blocks, so they're at an even higher risk. To really, the intent of the concrete blocks is to manage the water flow, to direct that water down to the rock chutes. So that's our proposal. That entire area, we still, again, from a road structural integrity perspective, we're very concerned about.
Okay, but and again, I just want to be clear, but we're not so concerned that we had to move the blocks in, because if you're driving down Erie Shore Drive right now, I apologize, Erie Shore Drive right now, and if I'm just a resident, I'm asking myself, how come I have to go all the way around when, to a layperson, both lanes are open for 90% of the road? And I'm worried that some people, and actually I saw it on Sunday coming out of Erie, somebody deked around the road closure and was going technically the wrong way because the two lanes were open. Again, how it appears.
So thank you. Maybe I misunderstood, but we're not done yet. We're going to be working in the next 5 weeks to complete the job. In the end, you'll be close to 2 kilometers of single lane.
And it will be closed tight to the single lane.
Yes, the engineering analysis indicates that it should be a maximum of 2 feet off the center line. There are certain situations where we have gone a little bit further, strictly for snow removal equipment, fire, et cetera, to provide that additional access.
All right. And this is semi-permanent, right?
This condition will stay until we have a long-term plan or the conditions change substantially, meaning the water levels go down.
Okay, so at this point, we don't even know what it would take to reopen the road. Barring
No, as you indicated, every time we have a wind over 30 kilometers per hour, we have issues. I'll just give you some stats from my friends at Lower Thames. So the current conditions are 3 inches over the all-time record, which was in August of '86. We're currently 29 inches above the long-term average, and we're up 12 inches over last year. So we're definitely seeing record levels here, and it's no surprise to us why we're having all these issues.
And emergency services will be able to still access the roadway. Should there be a fire or some other disaster, they can still all move to where they need to move to?
Your Worship, that's a great question, and we are explaining to folks that we have a dynamic situation, but we routinely respond to incidents like this, where a road's closed and we have to take a detour. I'd say that where we stand right now, it looks like we may have some delayed response, but make no mistake, the fire department, they will find a way there.
That was going to be my follow-up question as far as the delay. Could you speak to that?
Well, currently, the trucks proceed at Erie Station 14, the closest station, and travel westbound along that lane. When there's restrictions, we may have challenges making up that road. We're not going to tell our drivers and operators to drive against the traffic. It takes on some risk in itself. What we're looking at right now is we have other stations as well. Station Blenheim, Station 18 in Blenheim is going to be responding. They will be taking a little longer route to get there, but they'll be coming. And we're also looking at Station 16, which is South Raleigh. They have the ability to get on scene of that part of the community as well. So we are actively looking at this when we're talking with our dispatchers. Bear in mind too that EMS is a dynamic dispatch system. So that means that the ambulances are not situated in the stations. They're constantly in motion. So we'll leave it to our colleagues at the Central Ambulance Communications Center to dispatch the closest ambulance.
All right. Thank you very much. You've set my mind at ease. I think that when Mr. Kelly mentioned that the one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work, and if memory serves, like Mr. Zuzik said, there are going to be places we have to retreat and others where we don't or potentially we can't. I did ask earlier in the week for these numbers, and I hope they were collected. Do we have any sense of the property value and the associated taxes paid on Erie Shore Drive?
Thank you, through the mayor. Yeah, so for Erie Shore Drive, from Erie Beach to the Erie Road, the entire length of it has about $25 million of assessment. That would pay approximately $350,000 of taxes a year. The town of Erie O itself has $85 million of residential assessment. That would pay $1,175,000 of taxes a year. And the 1,600 acres of farmland has a value of approximately $24 million. That pays $75,000 of taxes a year.
Excellent. Did you happen to total all that? Because you beat me to it.
$1.6 million of taxes, approximately $1.4 million of municipal taxes, and $200,000 of education taxes.
Excellent. I appreciate that. I think that's important, and not to take away from the other issues that we face here in the municipality from an infrastructure standpoint. And I will use just the most recent example of the bridge over the McDougall, only because it's the most recent. Technically, there's no ramifications as far as a taxation standpoint is concerned. It's an inconvenience, don't get me wrong. And I think fixing it's probably the right thing to do. But if we lose Erie Shore Drive, and then we lose Erie O, and we lose that farmland, that's $1.6 million in the budget we have to make up. And the way the water sits right now, we would lose, and it wasn't fixed, say, we would lose Erie O as well. And that causes issues as far as disaster goes and mitigation, fire and whatnot, but also, again, potentially the taxation there. And we're all really concerned about those tax dollars. The only other thing I wanted to mention before I move on to the other issues was the PUC, of course, has been in the process of adding a water line to flow to Erie O. We all know that, or at least we do now, that there is a water line running underneath the dike, or through the dike rather, and that provides water to Erie O. And that cost of that line is going to be north of $1 million, and that's potentially money that we could have saved if we had have, in the past, dealt with the dike and the Erie Shore Drive. So there's a lot of moving pieces to this, and there's a lot of different aspects. So when I hear Ms. Cadeau speak about how we have a group that wants to partner and wants to share some of that burden and carry some of that load, and what they're really looking for is some help to do so, I ask myself, why wouldn't we? When somebody's reaching out, it always behooves us to reach back, and I think that's what they're doing there. And it is a different time. We hear about 20 years ago how we had a plan, but it was shot down by the homeowners or whatever the case may be. But it's an entirely different group of people there. And even just from a few years ago, the conversation has changed quite heavily to how do we work together to protect not only the dike and the public infrastructure, but the homes that are on it as well. Moving on, because I mean, this does affect a lot of us in regards to Highway 3. Again, I spoke to a number of farm market producers on Highway 3, and Mr. DeLonge is correct. Each of them said, and Mr. DeLonge wasn't there when I stopped in, that it won't end their business, but it is hurting their business. And it's hurting, I noticed myself that the traffic has gotten lighter. I've spoken to tomato producers that have had to find alternate means because they need to run down to Leamington. And to be honest, some of those folks are taking the shortest distance, which might not be the best choice as far as the municipality is concerned, but there it is. And again, that's something else that has a direct economic impact that we're going to have to deal with. The final one is Erio, and I want to thank Mrs. Jones for speaking this evening. Perhaps our CAO could update the rest of council as to the issue on Post Point Lane and what has happened to date.
Thank you. There was a number of different issues that were initially raised. The first is, as Mr. Kelly said, was public safety. Is always a priority. When the rocks were first put on Erio, we wanted to make sure, or the Post Point Lane rather, we wanted to make sure that we could take immediate steps to make sure that the fire services personnel had access to the water for the purposes of both filling their tankers and also if they needed to do a removal. We attended the scene and did an assessment, and it was determined that the rocks along the shoreline were not inhibiting that safety issue. There were several other issues that were also evident at the time, and we explained to a number of the residents that had questions that some of them would take longer to investigate. So the first is that it was not on our radar that there were people historically using that site for access to the waterways. As a result of this coming to our attention, it was clear that people were, as one of our speakers said tonight, Mrs. Jones had talked about, this is a typical access point to the beach. I can say with some certainty that we had not been maintaining that site for that purpose as we would be with the public beach on the other side of the park. So there was an assessment done and a commitment made that we would go back and look at the fire lanes to determine whether it was still safe to have access to the waterways for recreational purposes. And that was going to take some time to do that. We tried to make some accommodation with some of the residents. I know one of the property owners had offered access to the beachfront for some of the people that had expressed a concern. But so the first step was the roadway. There was also some pressure from some of the residents that they felt that one of the property owners had placed the rocks along the shoreline and that those should be removed. We did talk with the property owner. To be frank, the big variable since Erio was a town in and of itself was we've had unprecedented high water levels. And to be frank, we weren't sure we actually wanted to have the rocks removed in the absence of having done an assessment to determine whether there was some other steps that need to be taken to actually provide some protection to the infrastructure of the roadway or the fire lane. The idea that that fire lane had been underwater a number of times in the last several weeks into July and August, we're actually debating whether or not the rocks should be remaining or not. Over a couple of weeks at the same time, well, just after the emergency declaration in Erie Shore Drive, our public works staff, as soon as they had an opportunity to do so, reevaluated the situation and determined that the rocks could be removed and that they took some other steps. There were some concrete blocks placed at the end of the street that would actually provide some protection from wave damage and protect our infrastructure. So that's the current situation. The work that's still yet to be done is to do an assessment to determine whether there is safe access to continue to use those fire lanes for access to the beach. And to be frank, this is a bit of a balancing act. We recognize that there's a huge attraction to having access to our waterways, not just in Erio, but a number of places in Chatham-Kent. It's one of the things that makes our community attractive. By the same token, if people are not maintaining those access points in a safe manner, then that's something that would have to come back to council to determine what service levels council wanted to approve, and whether it would require additional servicing or whether the current level of service was adequate. So the sign that was put up was basically saying that it was not designed for current safe access, because we weren't maintaining it. There was not a non-trespassing sign. It was just a matter of having a cautionary note put for the citizens so that people knew that if they were going to continue to use it, they were doing so at some risk to themselves, and they had to make a personal assessment. That's the current condition.
All right. I guess I've got 9:30 on the over-under, and I've done just about all I can to get us there. Councillor Latimer and I delivered a petition. I just wanted to make sure that that was officially logged. We handed that to you when we had that meeting.
Yes, the petition was received.
Okay, that's all I needed to know. That's it for my questions. Thank you.
Councillor Pinsino, followed by Councillor Latimer.
Thank you, Your Worship. There's no question we have a real problem here. But to say we didn't look after the Dyke Road, I don't think anybody last year could have predicted that we're going to have record high water levels this year. If the water comes up again in 2020, the same amount it come up this year, there's no amount of money that's going to fix this. We're going to have flooded farmlands. We're going to have most of the properties down there are going to be underwater. And a population of 110,000 people, there's no way we can take this on cost-wise. We would bankrupt the municipality. Mother Nature has and always will win. We just have to try to mitigate what's going on. 2020 will tell the tale of where we're at with this. Depending on how much snow they get up north, depending on how much rain we get, how much snow we get, how much ice cover, there's all kinds of variables. One thing, Lower Thames, that survey they put out, traditionally when you have an extremely high water table, the next year it drops significantly. And we really have to hope that happens. But if it doesn't, there's absolutely nothing we can do. We can throw as much money around as we want, but there's nothing you're going to do. The high water will win, as it always has in the past. We got to hope the water recedes this year, because I'll tell you, next year we're going to have a problem.
Councillor Latimer.
Through the mayor, Thomas, I want to thank you for a very in-depth report. And I also want to thank the deputations, people who took the time to come here this evening. Councillor Thompson, he reviewed most of my points, but I do have one. When is the provincial response expected? Provincial response. When are we expecting to hear from the Mr. McNeil and or the PDAT team?
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. I've asked that question many times myself, and I asked it today before this meeting, and they will not commit to a time. It's strictly under provincial jurisdiction, and they set the timelines, but we continue to follow up and ask them. So we're doing everything we can to ensure that they understand the importance.
All righty. And for my own clarification, what is the difference between the DMAP? What are the parameters around that? Or is there somewhere I can look that I can find like what funding and what the parameters surrounding that funding? That's what you're using for all your, the things you talked about in your whole report. And then the DRAO, that's for permanent residents only that live along the shoreline, or the two programs? Just for my own knowledge.
Thank you, Mayor. So first of all, it's the Disaster Recovery Assistance for Ontarians. That's managed by the Municipal Affairs and Housing Ministry.
Okay.
They make the determination whether or not it's going to be activated or not. So Adam Walters, who reports to Bob, provided you with information and the contact information, and I can resend that out if you'd like.
So
the gentleman's name is Tim Ryall. He works for the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. He's prepared to answer any questions and provide you with all the details.
Okay, that's fine.
Do you want me to resend that to you then?
No, I've got it.
Okay.
I just wondered just for, if you, the two programs, so that's, one's provincial, one is federal?
No, they're both, it's just
both?
really only one program. So you have an assessment team that's already been out, they've done their assessment, they report back. The province is looking at that assessment now and determining, will these homes be eligible for some level of funding? And if they are, they then will notify us, and you'll have, those residents will have 120 days before they submit their application, is the deadline.
Okay, so that's the DRAO, right?
That's the program.
PDAT.
The program is the DRAO, exactly.
And that's different than the Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund.
Yes, that is the federal one.
Thank
It's a
you.
totally
Okay.
separate program. You have a
Yes.
report coming up right after this on that.
Yep.
We've already made that application.
Yep.
We were awarded in total $16 million from the federal government for that particular one. And that today is really the only external assistance we have received.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it. I also have one question I keep getting asked. There are a few residents along there currently living on Erie Shore Drive who felt that when the dike was originally constructed, that there was an agreement with the farmers that were involved in that 1,600 acres of land, that they would assist in the maintenance or keep that up. Is that correct? Or was that ever in place?
So that's what I addressed in terms of the legal slide. The Burke drain is a legal scheme under bylaws. It's
Right.
very, very old. So certainly that is a drain that benefits both the cottages and the farmers, the landowners behind. So they do all pay in towards that. And that's how we handle all other drainage type matters. So it's similar to all other drains in Chatham-Kent.
Correct. Okay, I just want the clarification. So that was originally
The challenge with it, of course, is that all other drains are not next to a dike facing the
The
onslaught
shoreline.
of a lake. So
Yes.
I think what Mr. Kelly, who would need to comment on this better than I, but would say that that drain was really designed for runoff from the farmers' fields, not obviously to deal with a whole lake.
Yeah. All righty. Thank you.
Councillor Sakachi?
Just got a couple questions for Thomas Kelly. Bear with me a little bit because I had a bunch down here, but Councillor Thompson did take off a few of those ones. So my couple quick questions I got. The big one is, how are you going to monitor the effectiveness going forward of what you've done to mitigate? So is there going to be ongoing monitoring and public, is the public going to be able to kind of touch base with us to ensure that the what's transpiring is working and it's not having a negative effect on them?
Thank you, Mayor. So with regard to monitoring effectiveness, we have implemented this solution already. The solutions we're proposing, we're really expanding them, and we have expanded them because they were very successful during the last flooding event we had. Our group is out there virtually every single day monitoring. We also have a good connection now with the association, and we communicate regularly with them. So I'm not sure what we need to do, but I think that communication is there and the monitoring is there.
What about large volumes of rain? What happens if we're going to get a large rain event with all those the meter blocks in place?
So the meter blocks, again, are to manage flow of water, and that really entails two things. Is that, first of all, it's the wind and the rain. Probably the wind is the predominant issue. We work very closely with Lower Thames. They're constantly looking and advising of any flood watches or advisories. So as soon as we as a group look at the weather at least 3 times a day, and when we see something coming up, we monitor, we go out and ensure that the current structure is in good shape, if there's anything we need to do. Secondly, we'll go out and look at how everything is operating once the rain is there.
And I do apologize because I do have several questions, but these are ones that have been brought to me several times. So the meter blocks are generally $50 to $65, I'm told, a piece. And generally speaking, curbing can be installed for about $12 a foot. So can you speak to me why curbing wouldn't be able to be utilized there as from an engineering standpoint?
Yeah. So there were a couple of reasons. First of all, the costs were less than what you're quoting for our blocks. But our thought too,
they were under $50.
They were
$50 to $65 a piece.
They were under $65. Secondly, is we've had success, and we can easily pack clay behind them. And the third reason is that someday we hope that we'll actually be beyond this solution, and we can use all of those blocks, reuse them for some of our other drainage works.
And the other thing too is when we're seeing these large events, we're always concerned about the weight on the structure. So what's these blocks going to have in regards to a negative effect on the weight, as well as what's going to mitigate the water that's running underneath the road, which in being out there several times during the event was a concern. So how are we going to mitigate that? I know this is good for the flow on the top. But what about the stuff that's going through the actual saturating the base of the dike?
And so we can't control the saturation, of course, but with respect to the blocks themselves, we did an engineering analysis that was confirmed by a consultant that said we couldn't put them on the edge of the road, and that's why we had to go with one lane of traffic. There was concern that if you put them too far off, you're applying a load to the slope, so therefore that wasn't favorable. So the location we chose actually has been engineered. That's an engineered solution.
And another question I had from several people on the BizNet is that obviously now with this being a one road, that it's going to change the whole dynamics of the traffic scheme out there. Have you guys looked at permanent solutions or temporary solutions in regards to the speeds out there, as well as other roads, how much they're going to be traveled, if they're going to be impacted? Because there's a lot of families on the BizNet that are now concerned with the volume of traffic they're going to get. Has that been looked at from a traffic standpoint?
It's part of our supervisor's job to look at all the roads and look at the wear and tear of all the roads, and he'll make recommendations. So it could be a situation, if we do see excessive wear, that it may change the priority next year for road repair.
Lastly, I just wanted to add, I do appreciate yourself, especially during this event. You were very accessible on the weekends. At night, I had questions, you answered them. I really appreciate that. I always also really appreciate the team and how hard they worked. One thing that I would like to see a streamlined change in the process, though, is that where I had a lot of concerns was the hydro aspect. So when Hydro One, and I know we've had that conversation, but when Hydro One went out, and I know that's not our policies and procedures, it's theirs, but there was no notification really given to any of these these residents. It was basically, we're shutting your hydro down, regardless if you're affected by the high waters or not. And this put a lot of people in really dire situations. A lot of these folks were running pumps continuously. They were struggling to find generators. And on a plus side, I heard from the residents out there how beneficial and how happy they were with Enbridge going out there and basically speaking to people door to door. But I really hope that because this might be an ongoing issue, that we can at least better streamline the process in letting the people know about the hydro, because anybody that has a basement, anybody that's in high water areas knows the impact of a pump going down. And let's face it, even though there's a lot of farmers out there and there's a lot of people that have generators, there's a lot that doesn't. And I really hope to see that we can kind of benchmark that to ensure that we can help do a better job. Because like I said, I do appreciate how greatly detailed everybody was out there, but that was something that I heard a lot of concerns about, and it was actually gut-wrenching to see some of the things that happened to those folks because they had no pumps, pumping their dwellings.
So thank you, Mayor. I know that a lot of the residents did not agree with the hydro being turned off. And again, that's the utility company, that's their responsibility. They felt it was unsafe, and that's really their call. Like, as a municipality, we cannot make that call. I know that Union Gas looked at the situation of the particular resident and then made the determination. Hydro One just said everybody's hydro goes off. So what we have planned is I am going to meet with them, both Union Gas and Hydro One and any other group, Integris as well probably, to let's get together and determine under what conditions do you shut off services and what conditions do you not. So we'll have that information for next time.
And I don't disagree. Obviously, hydro and water do not mix, but that's not my intent. Is not saying that I disagree with the fact that it had to be shut off. I just think that how it was shut off in regards to the no notification, I know we can't control that, but maybe like you said, with this meeting going forward, we can be a little bit more adaptable to understanding the circumstances that transpire out there.
So we may have missed some, but we did go door to door and notify everyone that these services were being removed because, as my colleague from FES from Fire stated, that we wanted people out of there. It was a very dangerous situation, and we advised them that their hydro and their gas would be going off, so it really wasn't fit to live in, but some still stayed as a result.
And like I said, I do want to, the last statement I want to make is I think that you guys did a fantastic job in regards to keeping people safe. So I really appreciate the effort of you and all the team.
Thank you.
So
And I want to say it was a team effort across the board, all these colleagues to my right and left, and over Marcus here, along with Jason from Lower Thames, and my immediate staff too. Again, when this happens, we are on call 24/7, and it's actually very stressful for staff too, as you can imagine. So we tried to do the best we could. Thanks.
Councillor Solomon?
Thank you, Worship. I heard a lot of comments, and a lot of costing going out. But I do remember the Shoreline Protection Act, which has since been revoked. And clearly, I agree with Councillor Pincinel. This is a big financial issue that's bigger than a population of 110,000 can handle. But you've heard from the public who say we want to go hand in hand and take responsibility. This is what what I thought I heard. But the province is the one who has the money. In your discussions with the province, have you suggested that it might be time to reinstate the Shoreline Protection Act? In case people don't know what that was, people who took care of their own properties by borrowing and having a lien put against their properties, and they put in steel wall. That was one of the solutions back then, mainly, put in steel wall to protect their shoreline properties. Now, that wasn't just Erie Shore Drive, because as you said, that's not where the only problem is. The Thames River, there's steel walls put in there. It was only a month ago. I had a client sell there, and there was this shoreline protection. A lien was still there, and we had to get it cleared off. They did it on the, I don't know, it was the Snai and the Sydenham also, but it was all over the place. People would apply, and they would invest in their own properties, initially funded by the province, program administered by the municipality, which is what we'd be better at because we don't have the deep pockets. Have you talked to the province about reinstating that? Because that's, if we're going to be a pilot project, that would be a great way to do it. And they've got the precedent. They've done it before.
Thank you, Mayor. So we have talked to them about that potential solution. And I would say the province has changed as well in the last 20 years. First of all, there's a much more emphasis on the environment, and they feel the solutions of the past have failed. And their motto is that they will not invest in any solution that keeps any residents, people, businesses in harm's way. So if there is a risk, according to the province, and they have lots of the data as well, they feel there's a risk, and this is going to be an ongoing issue. Peter Zuzak has presented to council the 50-year plan, and that's being accelerated as well. That shows a lot of our roads are going to be faced with the impact of water. The province, from my discussions, has no interest in investing in that. They want truly long-term solutions. Things about naturalized, that's what I'm hearing from the province. What about converting it to wetlands? As Councillor Pincinel said, Mother Nature is going to win. That's where they're at as well. They feel this is a very challenging solution. It's one that we can't engineer our way out of it. It's just, can we afford to do so? And I feel they're not there at all.
Well, I don't mean to be flip about this, but I realize that some of those people down in Toronto believe that Toronto ends somewhere when you stand up the top of the CN Tower and look out. But if they think wetlands is the answer, then where would they propose that the wetland line start? North of Chatham and go through to Windsor? Because if you drive there, you look at the elevations, it's pretty clear that Lake St. Clair could take over a big swath in the Tilbury area, the river. I mean, we are in an area that would have been a swamp at one point in time and only isn't because of advanced drainage schemes. So if their idea is that you just turn it back into wetlands, we might as well fold our tent, because we're on the high banks of the river here, right here, but move a little ways away from this, south into Chatham, and you'll find that that area used to flood worse than this until the bypass was built in Dresden area and Wallsburg, until the McHugh floodway was put there. I mean, that just does not sound like sound thinking. Turn it into wetlands. That would start somewhere, south of West Lorne and work its way down to Windsor. I mean, that's ludicrous. So I think we should be pushing pretty hard for reinstatement of the Shoreline Protection Act. That's the only thing that's going to help most of the people who we've heard tonight. And if they're willing to invest their own good money, the province is just advancing the money on a loan. Anyway, if that's their position now, I'm even more worried.
Well, thank you, Mayor. If I could clarify, though, that when I met with the Premier's advisor on flooding, he really liked our strategy, those 4 pillars: avoid, accommodate, protect, retreat. What I'm saying is that, again, where it's deemed in harm's way and you're not going to win that battle, that's when they're looking at naturalized solutions. They're also considering the avoid, the accommodate, and the protect. There are going to be cases where protect makes sense. So that's, again, back to the theme, not one size fits all. You've got to look at each individual situation. But I'm just saying the retreat option is something that they're seriously looking at that in the past they haven't. They would just run and armor everything up and try to protect the shoreline. And that's something I think that's changed significantly over the last 20 years. But they really liked our 4 categories, and I think they're going to use that as part of their modeling.
The difficulty, through your worship, is that historically we've built on rivers because those were the transportation routes at the time and also provided for mills and everything else. Do you retreat from the former city of Chatham? Do you retreat from Dresden and Wallaceburg? Did you retreat from Wheatley? That doesn't make sense. You've already established those places, and those you all have to protect. Erie-O, the same thing. I don't know how you retreat from villages that exist and towns, former towns that exist, and former city that exists. So it's a good theory, but you'd be doing a lot of retreating since most of our Thamesville's another example. I was there last night. You retreat from all of Thamesville. It doesn't seem to make logical sense. I guess it doesn't make common sense, and common sense is far too uncommon when you get to senior levels of government.
Before I ask for a motion to accept the report, I just want to add one thing as well. During all this, the latest in August, I received a whole lot of emails and various contacts, people are saying, I want to help. How can I help? And of course, there was no centralized way to do that. I would love to see us as a municipality put something in place when residents of Chatham-Kent want to help. It's a line they call, and if people need help, vice versa, they contact here, so we can be a conduit to link the people that want to help with the people that need the help. So if we could work on something like that for the future, that would be very helpful.
Thank you, Mayor. I totally agree. Thank you.
Okay. Can I get a motion to accept the report? Councillor Oche, seconded by Councillor Finn. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Item 15B, Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund.
Councillor Crew?
I'll move the recommendation.
Councillor Oche?
I'll second that.
Any questions? Councillor Solomon, followed by Councillor Harrigan.
Thank you, Worship. Through you, a very quick financial question. I'm just trying to understand the report. It appears that, as I read the report, monies have been paid out of a reserve to this point for the projects that had already been approved. Is that so? Mike, if that's correct, then could you tell me that, please, Mr. Quinton? And if
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. The monies are in the capital plan, in the capital budget for 2019. For 2020 and future budgets, that'll be a budget consideration of whether it's coming, where that money is coming from, or what share is coming from the affected property owners along there as well. So it's not necessarily all coming from the municipality taxes.
okay, that's it. You answered. You're one step ahead of me. That was the next question. Thank you.
Councillor Harrigan.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thomas, you alluded during the previous presentation that we aren't fully confident about these funds due to the election. So are we guaranteed the funds for 2019 fiscal year with this, and then any future years dependent on the government and whether or not they would like to keep the program?
Thank you, Mayor. So, of course, there's always a risk depending on the new government that comes in. Typically, new governments will maintain previous commitments, though. So we remain confident that we'll still receive this level of funding of 40%.
And can you also elaborate on a comment you made earlier around this being the largest amount of funding we've received, or the only amount of funding that we've been successful receiving from other levels of government?
Right. So the only external funding, which I meant provincial grants or federal, is this particular one, which is a $16 million commitment. It's over 10 years as well. To date, internally, what we have approved, we had about $1 million set aside for Rose Beach Line. And as Gord just alluded to, we have 2.4 million in capital. So about 3.5 million internally to the municipality, 60 million externally. And we will come forward every year in the capital budget for another ask of 2.5 million to support those other projects.
Right, and if my math is right, that's about 0.06% of total funding needed if we were to fix all of the problems we have right now in terms of flood erosion and mitigation.
You're correct. It's a very low number.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Pincinel?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Thomas. So the 2.5 million is going to come out of the capital budget every year. Is that what you're saying? Okay. This list you have, Appendix A, is that the intended area where this is going to go to? I guess my fear is everything's going to end up on the Dyke Road. This money will be dissolved in a real quick hurry. And there are projects on here that have been on there for years, like along the Thames River, the Sydenham River, that do need to be addressed. Is that the intention? The projects on Appendix A are the ones where this money's going to go?
Thank you, Mayor. So the application we made at that time was specific to Thames River, Sydenham River, and its tributaries. So at that time, we did not make an application for other areas. What they were looking for were solutions or engineered solutions at the time. So we did not have that for the other areas. So the application approval is based on the projects that you see, Thames River, Sydenham River. To move that to another fund or to another area, we would have to go back to the province and ask for that permission, or, sorry, to the federal government.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Item 15C, driving forward CK's transit strategy project initiation. Mr. Ian Clark has a presentation for councils. Four presentations.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff and Council. Over the summer, our transit operations team approached Council to pilot 2 recommendations for service level changes. That was the 5th urban route in Chatham, as well as the midday run for the interurban route. That was to address some immediate short-term pressures our system was facing. Tonight, this project will be making its first recommendations with an objective towards looking at longer-term system improvement and sustainability. For Council's information, we currently incur a gross base annual cost for our CK transit operations of just under 2.5 million. Out of that, we recover about 20 cents on the dollar through our fares and advertising revenue streams. An additional 47 cents comes from the municipal taxpayer on an area rated basis. And then the remainder of our operational costs comes from the provincial government's dedicated gas tax for public transit. Our ridership's seen exceptional growth over the past few years. We're projecting just under 300,000 passenger trips in 2019. It's also important to note that system-wide, we only collect about $1.57 fare per passenger trip, whereas it actually costs the municipality $7.60 to deliver that same trip. So that leaves us about $6 that we have to find through other revenue sources, the municipal taxpayer or the provincial allotment. But you can see that subsidy per trip goes down on our more utilized areas of the system. So the Chatham urban service is actually quite competitive in terms of its cost subsidy when you look at our municipal peers. The other thing I'll just point out on this slide here is just how much more a curb-to-curb specialized system costs us compared to its conventional counterpart. So as this project looks for new ways to improve our system, it is to our financial advantage
that we look for innovative ways to make our conventional service as accessible as possible to as many people as possible, so we can migrate more people over to the conventional service. Council can expect our final report driving forward in June of 2020 with recommendations that will shape our transit strategy over the next 5 to 10 years. It is our intention that any recommendations with financial implications will be made to fit within our existing funding envelope. But we also want to make sure that we identify for council potential new areas for service expansion where we believe there is sufficient demand should new funds become available. So it's a fairly broad study looking at all areas of our transit system, but our priority at this early stage is to look at options and solutions for anything that would have implications on our future transit fleet, because that does have a significant lead time involved when it comes to purchasing and procuring the vehicles. So since our final report won't be before council until next spring, we do intend on bringing fleet ownership recommendations to council as early as the 2020 budget process, as well as the recommendations today to own the vehicles that we'll be utilizing for the pilot we're proposing. So we think it's important. We wanted to define a service development framework that allows us to adequately cost out any service restructuring we do or a new service that we might propose. We've run into situations in the past where we've introduced new transit services, but out of cost concerns, we've ended up not having real-time bus tracking or smart card technology, or we've introduced an interurban system without adequate financial resources to support a shelter strategy. Now, all those services come with a cost, but we found through public feedback that there is an expectation that they're actually a base level service requirement. So by omitting those areas of our service, we're actually contributing to a poor perception overall of our service. So what we're going to do is we're going to develop a value proposition for CK Transit operations. This means that certain standards will be put in place on any service restructuring, as well as their associated costs that we'll propose to council. And that will better ensure a shared ridership perception of our system in a positive light. And we're hoping that perception is one that our system is safe, reliable, convenient, and customer focused. Now, factors such as frequency and demand will still vary. Frequency and coverage will still vary according to local demand. We'll be analyzing that demand throughout the duration of the project throughout our engagement process, as well as we want to determine how transit can play a supporting role in helping us achieve some of the social and urban development goals that council has already established. So if you look at our primary urban centers, our designated primary urban centers, they are in our official plan as the focal points for our population and employment growth. So where demand warrants, we want this project to help identify how transit can play a supporting role in that type of growth. Our social plans, they typically promote mobility options for all Chatham-Kent residents, regardless of location. So it's finding out how transit can then play a supporting role in achieving those objectives as well. Now, we may have to make priorities because not every objective we want to accomplish will fit within the funding envelope, but we at least want to make sure that council is aware of our transit needs municipal-wide, so we can make the best, most informed decision possible. So as this project moves forward, we're looking at 3 different types of service delivery models or a combination thereof. The first one you see is the fixed route method. That is the current method we use for our conventional transit service. It's relatively simple to understand for both our residents as well as visitors. It's efficient, particularly in large urban centers where there's high frequency and high demand. But it's also quite expensive if it operates in areas or times with lower ridership. If you look at Chatham, we have 5 conventional buses that travel around Chatham 13 hours a day, 6 days a week. But there's only really small windows each day when that capacity is warranted. We actually need the vehicles more for geographic reasons, so we can meet a 30-minute frequency. But if those vehicles weren't tied to those fixed routes in those corners of Chatham, there are certain times of day where we feel we could actually utilize less vehicles and still accomplish the same frequency goals. The next model is where we subsidize an existing transportation company to keep their fares as low as possible for our residents. We do this in a limited fashion right now with our relationships with both Erie Shores Transit as well as 4 Counties Transportation. Typically, this means the municipality will adopt the existing business model of those companies, so would have little or no say over fares or business practices or customer service standards, things like that. It usually saves on any form of capital investment that we might need to incur, and it's relatively turnkey to manage. Innisfil, Ontario made headlines a few years ago when they adopted Uber as their transit system in lieu of creating a more traditional transit system. Now, the major drawbacks of this model is that as popularity increases and more people utilize this option, costs actually increase to the municipality. Or if you look at our transit system right now, the more people that use our system, the subsidy actually decreases. So Innisfil did experience this, whereas their service was extremely popular, and it ended up in fare increases and actually a cap on ridership simply to control those costs. In your report, I've outlined some other disadvantages to this model, but it's really the rising cost risk that limits us to look at this model as only being viable in areas of Chatham-Kent where there is a low ridership or projections for low growth. We believe that the on-demand transit model shows significant potential for improving our transit system in the most cost-effective manner. Our paratransit service right now in both Chatham and Wellsburg are considered demand responsive. There is a booking element involved with that. But for our purposes, when we talk about on-demand, we're referring to relatively recent technology that allows for the real-time booking and rerouting of our vehicles. The bus routes aren't fixed. They're constantly being rerouted in real time according to the most efficient route, whereas there's demand for passengers to be picked up and dropped off. Buses will only travel to the bus stop where demand has been requested. Rides are hailed usually through a mobile app, a web portal, or we would also allow for a traditional telephone call for those that either don't have access to or aren't comfortable using that technology. Belleville, Ontario was the first in North America to adopt this type of system when they replaced their fixed route evening service with an on-demand model. What they experienced was a 300% increase in ridership with a 30% decrease in vehicle mileage. They're also able to cover more areas of the city with less wait times and still maintaining what their standards were for frequency. It's a model that's now being adopted by municipalities all across North America, both large and small, and there are several right now in Ontario that are in the exploratory phase looking at on-demand transit and how it can benefit their system. So we believe on-demand also has the potential for closer integration with our accessible service. We think it could benefit the interurban network. Vehicles would only travel to far out communities if they knew that there was requests being made. In fact, if a request was only there for 1 or 2 people, the system would be intuitive enough to actually route a smaller vehicle rather than our current Cutaway minibuses. There's also potential for virtual stops, which could be quite beneficial, where we could add them only at certain times of day or in certain times of the year to service major employers, special events like the RM Museum or the IPM, or we could have it for seasonal locations like farmers markets and so forth. So we are requesting council approve a pilot for on-demand services during the evening hours in Chatham, so we can better understand if CK Transit can realize some of the advantages discussed, to see if our riders can overcome the reservation barrier, and to try to determine new ways that we could assist them with that transition. The service would run 5 days a week from 7:15 till 12:30 a.m., and that's subject just to some tweaks as we monitor the progression of the pilot and the results as they come in. Now, should it be successful, we are hopeful that certain elements of the system could be adopted for the daytime service that would result in cost savings moving forward that we could then turn around and use for permanent extension of the service into the evening hours. We're also requesting that the municipality purchase the vehicles that we'll use in the pilot directly and retain ownership of them, but we'd still have a service provider operate, maintain, and store those vehicles on our behalf. We are alone among our peer competitors in not owning our vehicles. We end up paying full price of them throughout the life of our service contract plus interest, and we're unable to utilize the various government grants that become available for vehicle upgrades and vehicle replacement. It also affects the required length of our service contracts, as we typically want to structure our contracts in a way that matches the lifespan of the vehicle. So on an annual basis, we're incurring the least amount of cost possible for the capital portion. So we'll want to use this pilot as an opportunity to test the municipal ownership model while maintaining that third-party operation. It would be similar to the current arrangement we have with our ambulance provider, whereas we own the ambulance, but it's operated, maintained, and stored by our service provider. Now, council's decision on future fleet ownership recommendations that we'll make during the 2020 budget process will determine whether or not we keep those vehicles at the end of the pilot for future incorporation into our fleet, or whether we'll simply sell them at the conclusion of the pilot. So these are the recommendations that are included in the report. At this time, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Before we ask questions, we'll get the motion on the floor. Councillor Kirkwood White.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm happy to move the recommendation, and I have a number of questions and comments.
Okay. Councillor Latimer.
And I'll second that.
Okay. Okay. Councillor Kirkwood White.
Thank you very much. Ian, I want to thank you very much for your very comprehensive 27-page report that you provided to us, and to your team and to the folks who also made deputations tonight, Angelo and Dave and Philip. My first question has to do with how you determined if the proposed capacity for the evening service pilot will be sufficient for the demand.
Through you, Mayor Caniff. So this was based on our conversations with our employers and our ridership. We also looked at how our ridership typically tails off during the evening. So right now it is our best estimate that we'd be able to properly service residents within Chatham with a maximum of 2 vehicles. We do want to ensure that we have some flexibility, and we did build some flexibility into this model if we do experience an increase in popularity and there's some service denials take place as a result. Belleville did go through that process where it became very popular and they had to make an emergency purchase of a vehicle. So we'll ensure that we're well prepared if the service takes off in popularity, and that might involve us returning to council for additional funding for a vehicle.
Okay, thank you. And can you explain the benefit of the on-demand as opposed to the, the regular fixed route?
So we know that there's been a long-standing request for evening service in Chatham for quite a while, and the solution has always been simply extend the fixed route service. Now, we haven't exactly costed out, but right now we're trying to accomplish the exact same standards of a 30-minute frequency at maximum using 2 vehicles, where if we extended the fixed route, we'd be looking at right now 5 vehicles, and that could be close to double the cost that you're seeing in the report. So we believe that it's a far more cost-effective option while maintaining our service levels, which is why we think if it's successful in the pilot, we could perhaps implement elements into our daytime service, whether it's interurban or urban, and use those cost savings to potentially extend our service on a permanent basis.
Good. And my final question has to do with the fact that you have provided us with a number of comments that came through from the people who commented when we had the task force, and a number of quotes from others that you spoke to. Given the fact that you're not going to be providing another report until June, is there still plenty of time for citizens to feed information and input to you on this?
Absolutely. So this project has an ongoing engagement process. At any time, we have Let's Talk Chatham-Kent.ca open for comment. In August, we completed the first of our 3 planned public information centers. It took place in 7 different locations. We plan to do that again sometime in mid-November, where there'll be a more formal process for public feedback. But the way we're operating this project as well is we're doing the traditional surveys and the public outreach, but we're actually having a large volume of one-on-one meetings with our major employers, with our service groups, with these large stakeholders that are impacted by transit. We're getting a lot of good feedback and suggestions to that model as well.
Thank you.
Councillor McGrail.
There we go. Thank you, Mayor Caniff. So I have a quick question. You referred that this is area rated. Is there a document that you could provide us with the different areas within Chatham-Kent and how it is rated?
Absolutely. I'm sure my colleague, Mr. Quinton, would be able to provide that to us so we can email it to council.
Perfect. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions. Oh, Councillor Latimer.
Just a quick clarification, 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, correct?
That's correct.
Any thoughts for the weekend, for Saturday? Because that's always, Saturday evening has always been a bone of contention too.
We did consider, I mean, there's a few factors went involved. One thing, we did want to manage the cost expectations so we can have an opportunity to perhaps extend this permanently moving forward. What we're going to look at for at least the initial part of the pilot is see how we do on Friday night. And if we are successful in being able to navigate that, we think we could potentially look at Saturday night. But we want to see how Friday night goes before we make those recommendations.
All right, seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote. All in favor, put up your hand. Opposed? Carried. You got the count?
Right.
Yeah, Councillor Crew?
Could I ask that we move up the active lifestyle report? We have a lot of people in our audience that have been sitting here patiently through these riveting reports, and I'm sure they would appreciate moving that up. Do we need a motion?
Yes.
Could I make a motion that we'd move that up?
Okay, seconded by Councillor Finn. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, so the next one will be 20A.
I'd like to move the recommendations.
And seconded by Councillor Oche.
Yes, I'll second that. I'll second that.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote. All in favor, hands up. Opposed, none, carried. There you go. Waited all that time for 30 seconds.
Item 16, community development. 16A, applications for exemption from Part A or Part Lot Control PL 2019001111, True Line Construction Limited, 12 and 14 James Street, Community of Chatham.
Councillor B. McGregor.
The recommendation?
Councillor Kirkwood White.
I'll second.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote. All in favor, hands up. Opposed, none, carried.
17, corporate services. 17A, motion by Councillor Oche regarding bed and breakfast bylaw review.
Councillor Oche.
Thank you. Notice of motion regarding bed and
Sorry.
breakfast.
A little closer to the mic.
That Chatham-Kent management look into the licensing and charging of health and fire inspection costing for bed and breakfast establishments in area municipalities bordering Chatham-Kent, as Leamington pays $150 for licenses, which includes their inspections. Please have this report back to council on October 21st, 2019.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Harrigan. Questions? I say I'll pass it over to Councillor Oche. You have anything to add to that?
Not much. We had a email, I think it came to all of council and management as well on how much more it is costing in Chatham-Kent to have a bed and breakfast, and also how few bed and breakfasts we have left. I believe it was 10 that the young lady had told us. So it's, again, it's not changing anything. It's just a report on what our area municipalities are doing themselves.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote. All in favor, hands up. Opposed? None opposed, carried.
Item 17B, amending appointment bylaws.
Councillor B. McGregor.
I'll move the recommendations.
Counselor Crew, any question?
Second.
Counselor Crew seconds. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote. All in favor, hands up. Opposed? No one opposed? Carried.
Our supplementary agenda item 17C, Service Ontario contract.
Counselor Kirkwood-White.
Recommendation.
Okay, seconded by Counselor Pinsino. Any questions? Counselor Pinsino.
Thank you, Worship. I know in Dresden, they're permanently running it over there. Was there any thought of permanently running it in Chatham by the municipality?
Ms. Hoffman? Oh, Leanne. You get your 2 minutes of glory here.
Oh, I have to push it harder. Through your worship. The province will be going through the RFP process in coming months, but at this point, they are just looking for an interim solution to carry through that time.
I do know that one in Dresden is well run, I will say that. And I've been to them all over, so anyway, I'd like to see that explored. Thanks.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote. All in favor, hands up. Opposed? Carried.
Item 18, Finance, Budget, and Information Technology Services. 18A, Cooperative Purchases Assessment-Based Management Services.
Counselor Solomon?
I don't have a microphone.
All right, Counselor Solomon puts up the motion, seconded by Counselor Hall. Any questions? Seeing none, put it to vote. Hands up. Opposed? Carried. Unanimous.
Item 19, Chief Administrative Office. Item 19A, motion by Councilor Roche regarding Wheatley Fish Fry.
Counselor Oche.
Thank you. Bring forth a notice of motion regarding the Wheatley Fish Fry, that the Wheatley Fish Fry received the $2,500 that they tried to apply for and that a problem applying and it never came to Amy Wilcox. They did call Amy before and after the due date. Thank you.
Can I get a seconder for that? Okay. So it if I don't get a seconder, it dies. Okay. Next.
Item 20, Community Human Services. Item 20A, we've dealt with. Item 20B, Public Health Modernization Update.
Counselor Foss.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the recommendation that the General Manager, Community Human Services, be authorized to enter into negotiations with Sarnia Lambton with a view to restructure and/or consolidate the respective health units into a regional public health unit, and any final recommendations to be brought back to Council for approval.
Seconded by Counselor Oche. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Item 20D, Chatham-Kent Public Library 2018 Annual Report. We have a presentation by our CEO, Tanya Sharp.
The workplace has been pulled.
Judy, when we do the change, right here to here we go.
Thanks, John. Oh, that's on great. It should be on there. It should be
Library.
if it was in alphabetical order. See how much easier it would be?
My grandson. You go and then if you press that.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Really pleased to present CKPL's annual report for 2018, which will illustrate the value of the public library in your community. First, I want to say that it's a true community space. The library provides opportunities for the community to connect, network, and learn new things. The library creates a sense of belonging in your community, and everyone is welcome through our doors. CKPL assists, staff assist in bridging the digital divide and ensures that information is accessed with ease, whether it's in the library or within your community. Let's see if I, woohoo. Okay. So we've grouped a lot of our stuff under the different buckets that work with our strategic plan, which also aligns with CK Plan 2035. So under people and culture, our circulation continues to be very strong in all formats. We actually saw an increase of 6,000 items circulated over 2018. Our electronic items continues to be really strong, and we are often approached by members in our community to provide more digital services. We welcomed over 350,000 visitors through our doors, where people felt safe, supported, and had opportunities to be healthy, both physically and mentally. Close to 32,000 CK residents have a library card, and that is steadily increasing. In 2018 alone, staff signed up over 4,200 new users. Public libraries are still a place that people go to ask questions. We had over 42,000 information questions answered, and those can range from how do I get into my Google account to who was the Booker Prize winner in 2016, and can you help my family? Can you help me find my family back in 1895? Continuing with our people and culture, we offered over 1,700 free programs across all of our 11 locations. We had 32,000 participants. Programs provide opportunities for our community to connect, engage with others, and to learn. Again, in keeping with the CK Plan 2035, we talk about how we enhance the economic prosperity of our residents. So we know that economic prosperity is a driver in our CK Plan 2035. It's also important in our strategic plan for the library. And here's a number of the ways in which we help achieve this important goal. One, we're free to everyone. We have free access to technology, community resources, and space. As well, we provide access to free programs, leisure activities, information, and recreational reading. In 2018, we assisted 633 low-income residents with filling out their income tax forms. So in partnership with Employment and Social Services, the Community Navigators continue to provide support through information, advocacy, and referral to other local community partners and agencies. The program works to reduce barriers to service for CK residents. They assist with finding and filling out government forms and accessing community, social, and government services, with the goal of reducing poverty and reliance on social services in our community. I also want to highlight that we are a safe refuge for the homeless and the underserved people of our community through our provision of free access to Wi-Fi, computers. We are also an informal and often formal warming and cooling stations. So I'm really proud of our Chatham-Kent Public Library system and the staff. I have a couple of staff that are here to support me, Sarah and Heidi, my managers. We have a fantastic library board, and I have 3 of my library board members here. They have waited a long time. They're very good. So with it being Positivity Week and the launch of, I think you will enjoy some of our successes. We had our first fine-free summer reading club last year. It reduced barriers to accessing library services due to fines. Summer Reading Club is instrumental in maintaining children's literacy levels over the summer. It means that children go back to school ready to learn. Virtual cards are used by our residents who are unable to physically access the library for whatever reason. We created 404 cards in 2018, and that's up from the 263 we made in 2017, which is our year we launched it. We provide access cards. These are cards to assist some of our most vulnerable populations in Chatham-Kent by enabling them to access library services and computers. And generally it's because they have no fixed address. So not on this slide, but I feel it's really important to mention, and you'll see it in the annual report, is that we have a seed library. Last year, over 2,200 packets of seeds were distributed. This is a popular program. Its goal is to provide free seeds for residents to borrow so they can grow healthy gardens and create beautiful spaces in their own backyards and local communities. Staff tie this collection to their program, or this service to their collections and to their programs, and we partner and network with local nurseries, greenhouses, and horticultural societies to offer topical and timely programming. And yet there's another slide. So we offer a program every year called CK Reads, and it is to encourage reading and to increase a sense of community in CK by creating a common topic of conversation through a shared love of reading. For our last year's author event, the Chatham branch was full to capacity. We did it out in our sort of common area, and we were pushed back past the doors. So I look forward to letting you know what this year's book will be, but I'm not allowed to yet. Sydenham Field Naturalist offered 4 programs from January to March. It's an excellent example of a great community partnership. The lectures are filmed and then televised by Your TV, and we offer that program in our meeting room at the Chatham branch, and we've had to turn people away because it's not big enough. We offer a breakout room. We have some very creative staff. Last year in 2018, it was Escape to Hogwarts. You may have seen it. It had a lot of attention on our social media channels. At the Chatham branch, we offered 55 sessions, and we had 195 people attending. And the Ridgetown branch also offered it, and they had 45 people attend. So all these programs, which are innovative, creative, and informative, are offered free of charge to our communities. While we would prefer everyone have a library card, we do not make it mandatory. CKPL's programming budget to cover supplies and speaker cost is $2,000 a year. This is for both children's and adults programming. It's pretty obvious we could not offer a fraction of what we do without community partnership and sponsorships from local service clubs. So in conclusion, CKPL is the heart of every community throughout Chatham-Kent, with 305 open hours over 6 days a week in 11 locations. CKPL is proud to offer current and popular browsing and viewing collections along with topical and timely programming for children and adults by trained and welcoming staff as part of its vision to connect communities with information and inspiration. CKPL truly offers something for everyone. That's it.
Questions? Oh, is there Councillor Pinsonneau?
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Tanya.
Can I get a motion to accept the report first?
Okay, I'll
and
move
then
it.
Councillor Latimer. Okay, let's get started there.
All right, thanks. Your report shows that the electronic digital items have real strong circulation. Is that consistently growing month after month?
It's consistently, it's a very steady increase from year to year, definitely. Oops, sorry.
Is the paper items, are they still circulating strong?
Yes, they're actually maintaining very well. And as I mentioned in the presentation, we're getting asked for more and more electronic materials. But I don't know if you, well, you would probably know because you're on our board, but we have an Express Reads collection and an Express Views collection, and those items go out twice as, they go out, they have a 1 week loan period, and they go out twice as fast as our print. And that's a collection we are continuing to grow.
I guess I'm old school, but I like to read it too on a piece of paper, but anyway. The library, as you said in your little spiel there, it is the community hub in all the small communities. You know, schools now are requiring the students to do a certain portion of it online, and I know if I go in there at night, there'll be kids on there doing homework on the library computer, so that's awesome. That's something we can put out there. I'm proud of the progress that the library system, CK library system, has done under your watch, of course, and you have some real good staff working for you. I've been on this board for the completed 13 years now, and honestly, the last 5 have been a pleasant trip. And keep up the good work. You're all doing a fine job.
Thank you.
Oh, Councillor Latimer?
I just, through your mayor, your worship, Tanya, I wanted to ask, through my own work as an occupational therapist, I've seen the value of the Navigator program, the Community Navigator. How else does the library assist with breaking down barriers and assisting the vulnerable people in our communities?
Through the mayor to you.
Yep.
Well, I can definitely reiterate some of them. As I mentioned, we're a safe refuge for some of our homeless individuals in our communities and some of our less socially connected folks in our community. We are also, just this year, we were formally a cooling station. No, warming. It was cold. We were warming stations, sorry. And we actually opened our doors on days that we normally wouldn't be open so that folks could come and use us, and that did happen. I think it's important to stress that we have free access to computers and Wi-Fi, and that's really important. The fact that we removed barriers to children using the library in the summer to keep up their literacy, their reading skills, by taking away the fines. I think that was really crucial to families that maybe are at a moderate income. It's not always easy to, between juggling all your soccer and whatever, to get the kids and their materials back on time. The offering of access cards to folks who are precariously housed and don't necessarily have a fixed address. I think that was really important, that they can, you know, they live in our communities, and they deserve to be able to use the library as well. The other thing to mention is that as part of our strategic plan, our library board is looking at every one of our policies as they come up for renewal to make sure that they are accessible, reasonable expectations, and easy to interpret.
Thank you. I have to tell you, I was most pleased to be asked to sit on the library board. I have my original library card that's now 52 years old.
It should be in a museum.
Yeah, it should be, as I am. But anyway, the library truly is one of my passions in reading. And so I'm so pleased with your staff. If any of you have an opportunity to come and visit us or visit the library and or sit in on a library board meeting, yes, I know, Amy, you're next. Your staff are to be commended, and you as well, Tanya. So
Thank
keep
you.
up the great work.
I'll pass on those good words. Thanks.
Councillor Finn?
I may have missed it, but you were talking about the fines-free summer reading. Statistics, how successful was it? How many did you have come in or increased?
Through the mayor to you. Thank you. Yes, it was really successful last year. We had an increase of about 17% in summer reading club signups, which is about just over 400. The program attendance was up by 26%. We had a 7% increase in circulation, and that sounds like a small thing, but it's actually about 4,600 items went out, more children's items went out. And we had an increase of 116% in library cards made for children, which is just over 200, like 225. So, but the key thing is that that's more children coming through the doors and getting exposed to different types of books that they will enjoy, which makes them want to read more, which keeps their skills up. And as we know, it's not just keeping up their literacy skills, it keeps up all of their skills for school, so numeracy as well.
And I'd also like to say, it's an honor to be on the board. I'm primarily always used it with the kids. I went in on Saturday for the family history, and volunteers showed me around to areas, I tell you, I didn't even know you had in there. That if you were looking to find anything out about your history, that's the place to go. Thank you.
Yeah, we have some fabulous volunteers in the the OGS room.
Seeing no other questions, oh, sorry, Councillor O'Shea.
Thank you. Through your workshop to Tina, or to Tanya, sorry, Tanya.
That's okay.
Your programming has been great, and the amount of people coming out to it. Does library have a base budget for programming? And if so, how much is it?
Our base, through the mayor to you, our base budget for programming is $2,000, and that was given to the library back in, I think it was 2008 or 2009, after we had a library master plan done, and the recommendation was to have 10,000 in that, but we had a lot of other requirements to fulfill, so we were able to get $2,000. And like I said, that is for both adult and children's programming. Honestly, if we didn't have such great support from, the Lioness in Tilbury or La Sertoma in Thamesville, or I'll plug the Rotary Clubs because, I'm a Rotarian and they're very kind to us. They help sponsor our CK Reads every year. About 4 of the different Rotary Clubs help to sponsor that. Without them and other community partners, even other municipal departments that help us out to get things done, we wouldn't be able to offer 1,700 programs.
I'm sure you accidentally forgot the Berlin Kinsman as well.
I didn't, yeah,
I'll
sorry.
throw that in there.
So I will say, I don't have a copy because I've given them all away, at the very last page of the annual
Yes.
report, we do acknowledge, because,
I'm just kidding.
the back, we acknowledge all of our sponsors. But yeah, I really should have remembered that one, sorry.
I'm just teasing. But I also would like to thank the staff because we do have a family in need that the library staff are helping out when they won't take help from anyone else. So I just want to thank you and your staff for that, because it's definitely great to have that help for these people.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, just to clarify one thing, you mentioned the budget, and you said $2,000 was the base budget. What is that specifically for?
We spend 1,000 on adult programming.
Okay,
and
so it is programming.
1,000 on children's
I thought the
program.
question referred to what is the overall library budget. I'm saying, boy, are we getting a deal for $2,000.
You're getting a deal for what you are paying.
Seeing no other questions, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Closed session, there was no closed session. Motion for approval of communication items. Councillor Oche, seconded by Councillor Foss. Any items to be pulled out? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Non-agenda. What I'll do is I will just start for microphone ease. I'll start over here. We can just go around the horseshoe there and back this way. So starting with Councillor Harrigan.
Thank you. Just one item for tonight. Reminder, and certainly I'm sure there will be plugs on social media, that our next council meeting will be taking place at Tilbury Ryder Hall. So for anybody who is maybe still up watching, it will be great to go out and for the councillor to get to know West Kent a bit better, and for West Kent to come a little closer to council activity and not have to drive so far. So really looking forward to that and hope to see everybody out.
Thank you, Your Worship. On your desks, you will find a flyer announcing the 80th Annual Rotary Banquet being held on Friday, November the 8th. And the guest speaker that evening is Rocco Rossi, who is the president and CEO of the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. Tickets are $60, and I have some with me tonight.
Thank you, Worship. I'd just like to congratulate Fire Fest. They come out Friday night to Thamesville with the fire trucks. We did a parade through town, up to Johnny Quest for supper, and it was a good turnout. So hats off to Brent Deneuer and all his volunteer group. They did a great job.
I had a request coming that Tilbury is our first pilot for going outside council chambers, but someone asked me tonight if there's a list of other potential communities that we will be going to if this is successful. Is there something out there that information I can pass along?
We miss those mics when they aren't there, are they? We do have a calendar of the proposed schedule, so we'll make sure that that gets out and we can share that with you. And right, okay.
We're good.
I can just add to that is the envisioning that we would be in each ward. So of the other 5 wards that we don't host, we would have a meeting in each of those wards, and we look for an appropriate spot in one of those. Yes, sorry, to clarify, this is a pilot, so as you said, if it's successful, what are we looking at? Councillor Thompson, no. Councillor Wright? Oop. Just see hands across, anybody wants? Okay, Councillor Oche, followed by Councillor Scotchy.
I just wanted to touch base on what Melissa said about the October 7th meeting being in Tilbury. I hope we can get a lot of our Ward 1 people out to it. I have to apologize, I'm not going to be able to make it myself. I have surgery that day, so, but I hope everybody comes out and supports this. I know quite a few people we talked to at a meeting the other night on the storm problems in Tilbury, and they seemed quite happy to come out, but I do want to clarify that it's not something that you can just come to and speak, because I had people thinking that they could come and talk to about the storm and the road being closed and things like that, but it's a normal council meeting, so I just wanted to make that clear to everybody that is coming out. Thank you.
I just want to say that it's the launch today of the Positivity, 12 Days of Positivity. I want to thank Captain Positive and Woman who showed up at Family Service Kent and everywhere else if you see them on Facebook. But it seems everyone's really getting involved, and I think we've started a trend here in Chatham-Kent, and that would be a tribute to Mayor Caniff, who with his group that started this. So congratulations, it's really taken off, and kids just love seeing these guys show up.
To commemorate the 150th anniversary of the arrival of the first British home children arriving in Canada, the atrium lights of the Civic Centre were featured red, white, and blue colors September 28th. From 1869 through 1948, as many as 100,000 children were immigrated to Canada from the United Kingdom to be used as indentured farm workers and domestics. Although at the time most Canadians who adopted them believed the children were orphans, later research has shown approximately only 2% of the children fit that category. Estimates are nearly 400 children were placed in Chatham-Kent. Research is ongoing, and that number is expected to increase. More than 100 Canadian cities, landmarks, and institutions are marking the day as part of the Beacons of the Light tribute, including the CN Tower and Niagara Falls. According to the British Home Children Advocacy and Research Association, descendants of the BHC, referred to as Canada's national builders, now number in the millions.
Thank you. And I'll just add a couple of quick things. Pumpkin Fest, was able to attend that in Wallaceburg. It was pretty amazing. The giant pumpkins, like 1,500 pounds, and a bean that was like 8 feet long, 10 feet long. It was crazy. But what a great event. I think there was had over 1,000 people attend there. As Firefest, it was in Thamesville and in Chatham the next day. And just the 12 days of positivity, one key thing is the kids absolutely love Captain Positive and Optimum, and they'll be attending virtually every elementary school in Chatham-Kent in a tour similar to what Elmer the Safety Elephant does, or did anyway, visit all the schools, and the schools bring out their population. So again, Chatham-Kent, very active in all the things that's going on. That's great. The reading of the bylaws, first and second reading. Councillor Solomon, seconded by Councillor Hall. All in favor? Opposed? Third and final reading. Councillor Oche, seconded by Councillor Crew. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Resolution council in closed session adjournment.
Please note that the October 7th, 2019 council meeting will be held in Tilbury at the Tilbury Arena in Ryder Hall. That Chatham-Kent Council adjourned to its next meeting to be held on Monday, October the 7th, 2019, and that Chatham-Kent Council authorize itself to meet in closed session on that day to discuss any matters permitted by the Municipal Act.
Can I get a motion to adjourn? Oh, sorry, seconder. Sorry. Councillor Finn, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Done. Yeah, finished before 10. Woohoo.